My mother-in-law accused me of stealing $16,000 from her retirement fund. Then she called the police to handcuff me in the middle of her own birthday party. Who would have thought that as the entire extended family pressured me to bow my head, my husband would shout that I was his wife, asking if they still had any conscience. Then he placed a bag full of money on the table, making the whole family wish the earth would swallow them whole. There are wounds that do not come from strangers but fall upon us from our own family's dinner table. A daughter-in-law who had lived an upright life as a senior accountant for years, always patient for the love of her husband, was suddenly accused one day by her mother-in-law of taking her $16,000 pension fund. A written confession of debt was placed on the table, threats thrown as sharp as a knife. However, what silenced the entire family was not the mother-in-law's tears, but the moment her son, usually so devoted he seemed weak, suddenly stood up to protect his wife, yelling at his mother and sister right as the police were about to handcuff her. Chicago. At the end of autumn, a light drizzle had been falling from noon until evening. The maple trees along Michigan Avenue shed their yellow leaves onto the cold, wet asphalt. The wind that slipped through the glass windows of the office brought a chill that easily made the heart melancholic. That afternoon, I was sitting in front of my computer, rechecking the monthly debt report when the phone on my desk vibrated. The caller was my husband, Liam Hayes. I answered the phone, not even getting a word in before his voice came through, lower than usual, with a hint of hesitation. He asked me to stop by his mother's house after work for dinner. My hand froze on the computer mouse. I asked him what was going on. After a few seconds of silence, he sighed. He said his mother had something important to discuss, but he wasn't sure what it was. He pleaded with me to be patient with her, to help him just this once, explaining that his mother had been under a lot of stress lately. I looked out the window. The lines of vehicles on the street below were a continuous chain. Red lights glittered on the rain-slicked road surface. That phrase, to be patient with his mother, I had heard it so often I had memorized every pause for breath within it. I didn't answer right away. There was a familiar yet exhausting feeling in my heart. I told Liam that every time his mother called suddenly, she always said something was important, but it always ended with her either blaming me for being ungrateful, asking for money, or talking about Chloe. I asked what it could be this time. He said quietly that he knew I was tired. But he reminded me that his mother had suffered her whole life. He asked that if I loved him, I would please speak to her nicely. I gave a bitter smile. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't smile, I might have sighed heavily. I told him I always spoke nicely, and he knew that. Across the line, there was silence. A moment later, Liam said quietly that he knew, and that he would come home early tonight so we could go there together. I agreed and hung up. My name is Alara Vance, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a senior accountant at Precision Ceramics Incorporated in the Loop. The accounting profession might sound dry, dealing only with invoices and transaction receipts every day, but I feel this job suits me. Numbers don't know how to flatter, nor do they know how to slander. Right is right, wrong is wrong. Unfortunately, family life is not as neat as a balance sheet. I have been married to Liam for 5 years. He is 2 years older than me and works as an electrical engineering manager at a large shopping center. Liam is not a bad husband. He doesn't drink, gamble, or cheat. After work, he is willing to help his wife with the dishes. If a light bulb burns out, he changes it himself. If my car breaks down, he takes it to the shop. To many people, that would already qualify as a good husband. But in life, there is a kindness whose value is dragged down by a single word, but. My husband's but was his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Eleanor is 62 this year. Her body is small, but her voice is always sharp. She has a habit of looking people up and down from head to toe, and then with a single light sentence, she can make someone feel suffocated. In front of the neighbors, she often said she was a woman who had suffered her whole life, sacrificing for her children. That wasn't wrong. In her youth, she lived with a temperamental husband. My father-in-law, during his lifetime, was a patriarchal and controlling man. He held all the money in the house, making all decisions, big and small. When angry, he would slam the table and yell at his wife and children. Liam once told me that when he was 18, he saw his mother huddled near the kitchen, her sleeves pulled down to cover bruises. That memory is what makes Liam so devoted to his mother. He often told me that his mother was not as happy as other people's mothers. She was oppressed by his father her whole life, and now that his father was gone, he just wanted his mother to live in peace. I understood. As a woman, who wouldn't feel sympathy hearing a story like that? I once genuinely cared for Eleanor. When we first married, I bought her everything from a wool shawl and a box of supplements to soft slippers so her feet wouldn't hurt when walking around the house. Every time we went back to her hometown in rural Ohio for family events, I always rolled up my sleeves to wash dishes, clean vegetables, and cook without complaint. But loving someone does not mean they have the right to hurt you continuously. Eleanor has one very strange trait. She can't stand it if another woman in the house is praised more than she is. I would cook a green bean casserole and be praised by relatives for how savory it was. She would immediately say that of course it was savory from the cream of mushroom soup. What was there to praise excessively? I bought Liam a new shirt that fit him perfectly. His mother saw it and commented on what a clever wife I was, taking care of my husband like a boss. Or perhaps I was just afraid someone would steal him away. One time at dinner, Liam served me a piece of fish. His mother let out a long, theatrical sigh. "Oh, it must be so nice to be doted on like that," she said, loud enough for the table to hear. I just remember in my day, if a wife didn't put the best piece of food on her husband's plate first, well, let's just say she wouldn't hear the end of it. Liam just laughed awkwardly at the time, telling his mother not to overreact, that he was just getting a piece of fish for me. Eleanor glanced at me. "When women are spoiled too much, they get big-headed," she said. "Give them an inch, and they take a mile. Just because you have a good salary, you feel superior to others." I stayed silent and continued eating. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I was trying to maintain boundaries for my husband's mental health. Still, the piece of fish that day felt stuck in my throat, so hard to swallow. I gave in not because I was afraid, but because I felt sorry for Liam. I knew he was caught in the middle. On one side was a mother who had been wounded by life. On the other was a wife who needed protection. He was confused. He was in a no-win situation. But the longer it went on, the more I realized. Sometimes, giving in does not make a home more peaceful. It only makes the person who is wrong feel entitled to go even further. Besides Eleanor, the person who gave me a headache was my husband's younger sister, Chloe Hayes. She is 31 and sells cosmetics online through an MLM. She calls it a business to sound cool, but her income is unstable. The money she earns is not much. But her lipstick, bags, and clothes must always follow the latest trends. She is very good at flattering her mother, very good at being doted on by her brother, and especially loves to compare herself to me. In front of Liam, Chloe would call me sweetie, telling me how amazing I was. She'd say that if only she could be like me, her mother wouldn't have to worry anymore. But when it was just the two of us, her tone would change. She'd remark on my position as a senior accountant, saying it was impressive. But she'd add, with a saccharine smile, "You're such a power woman, Alara. I just hope you remember to let Liam feel like the man of the house sometimes. You know how guys are? They need to feel needed. You wouldn't want him to start feeling redundant, would you? Men only feel insecure if they don't know how to live their own lives properly." She would just sneer and say nothing more. That afternoon, after hanging up with Liam, I sat for a few more minutes in front of the computer screen. The numbers on the report were still neatly arranged, but my head was a tangled mess. I had a feeling that this dinner would be more than just the usual nagging. Around 6 p.m., I turned off my computer, tidied up my papers, and went down to the basement to get my car. On the way, I stopped by a favorite fruit shop on North Clark Street, buying a basket of gourmet pears that Eleanor usually liked. The shop owner, while wrapping the fruit, laughed. She asked if I was buying for my mother-in-law again, remarking that daughters-in-law like me were rare these days. I smiled faintly. I didn't know if I was rare or not. I just hoped the recipient thought so too. The lady thought I was joking and laughed. Meanwhile, I stared at the basket of pears wrapped neatly in clear plastic, my heart suddenly feeling sad. So often, outsiders only see how considerate we are. But inside the home, even that small amount of consideration is not enough to be exchanged for a friendly glance. When my car turned into a narrow street in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, the rain had stopped. In front of Eleanor's house, a small crabapple tree trembled with a few wet leaves. The living room light was a warm yellow. I saw Chloe's car already parked in the driveway. I turned off the engine and sat silently for a few seconds in the car. For some reason, my heart felt heavy as if weighed down by a stone. A small voice sounded in my head. "Alara, you need to be careful tonight." I took the basket of pears, straightened my collar, and stepped out to ring the doorbell. The door opened. Liam stood there, his face more tense than usual. He looked at me, his eyes seeming to want to say something, but then he swallowed it back. From inside the living room, Eleanor's voice came, as cold as the wind. "Oh, you are finally here. Come in, come in. The whole family is just waiting for you. I stepped over the threshold, still holding the basket of pears. The fragrant aroma of pot roast from the kitchen spread through the air. But for some reason, I felt the house was colder than the rain outside. I had just entered the living room when Eleanor lifted her head to look at me. Her eyes glanced at the basket of pears in my hand, neither pleased nor sad. Her gaze was cold, as if I had just brought something useless. I placed the basket on the table and said softly that I had arrived. I told her I brought her favorite pears. Eleanor smiled cynically. Yes, just put it there. How much can an old person like me eat? In a few days, it will probably rot. A waste of money. If this were any other day, I would have laughed awkwardly and added a few words to lighten the mood. But that day, my throat felt dry. I just replied, "Yes, ma'am." Chloe sat in a wooden chair near the window, her hands deftly opening a bag of chips. She was wearing a cream-colored dress. Her hair was curled, her lips bright red. Seeing me, Chloe smiled very sweetly. She said Alara was here. "Today, Mom cooked all your favorite foods. You're really lucky to be her daughter-in-law, so loved by your mother-in-law." The sentence sounded like a compliment, but its end was as sharp as a thorn. I looked at Chloe and replied calmly that, yes, her mother's cooking was always delicious. Eleanor stood up and walked towards the kitchen, tossing out a sentence loud enough for the whole house to hear. Delicious or not, it's all the same. If a person has a good heart, the food tastes good. If they don't have a good heart, even the most delicious food tastes bland. Liam stood beside me, his face a little stiff. He took my handbag and said quietly for me to wash my hands, then we would eat. I looked at him, and in his eyes, there was guilt, but also the familiar helplessness I had seen so many times. I didn't blame him then, I just felt tired. Dinner was served on a wooden table in the middle of the house. There was a dark brown pot roast, a bowl of green bean casserole, a plate of salad and dinner rolls, plus the crispy fried chicken that Liam loved. If you didn't see the faces of the people sitting around the table, you might think this was a warm family dinner. But there are dinners where the food is hot, but the people's hearts are cold. Eleanor sat at the head of the table. Chloe sat beside her mother, and I sat next to Liam. During the meal, almost no one spoke, only the sound of spoons and forks clinking. I was just about to take some casserole when Eleanor suddenly sighed. Old people really have a miserable fate. When you're young, you suffer because of your husband, and when you're old, you suffer because of your children. I thought once the children were grown and had a spouse, I could get a little help. It turns out, Liam put down his fork. He asked what was wrong, suggesting they talk about it after dinner since they were eating. Eleanor glanced at her son. When I speak like this, who am I targeting that makes you so startled? Or is there someone in this house who feels targeted? I looked down at my plate. My hand holding the fork tensed slightly. Chloe chuckled. Mom, nowadays people say silence is golden, but if you stay silent on too many issues, the gold might really disappear. Her words made the atmosphere at the table even more tense. I raised my head and looked at Chloe. I asked what she meant. Chloe widened her eyes, feigning innocence. I'm just talking about things that happen out there. You're being so sensitive. Liam quickly served me a piece of chicken. Eat, Alara. The chicken is still hot. Eleanor saw the piece of chicken in my bowl, and her face immediately darkened. She put down her spoon and fork with a loud clatter on the table. There it is. You already have a wife. I say one sentence, and you're afraid your wife will be sad. I raised you for decades, and in the end, it means nothing compared to someone who has only been my daughter-in-law for 5 years. Liam sighed. You're thinking too far, Mom. I just got a piece of chicken for Alara. Eleanor smiled cynically. Yes, I'm old. Whatever I say is wrong. The new daughter-in-law is a precious gem. I didn't answer. I told myself to be patient. Just one more dinner. People say I just told myself I needed to be the bigger person and keep the peace. But for some reason, at that moment, I thought that if you concede in the wrong place, peace wouldn't come. What would come is a slander ready to fall upon me. The dinner ended with a heavy atmosphere. I stood up to help clear the plates, but Eleanor brushed my hand away. No, don't. Today you don't need to touch anything. Just sit down. There's something we need to talk about. Her tone, shifting to a formal you, made me shiver. Usually she called me Alara, or when she was happy, dear, and when annoyed, you. Every time it was like this, I knew she was building a distance. Chloe immediately stood up, reached into her designer bag, and pulled out a sharply printed, multi-page document. She slid it across the glass table in front of me. Sign here, she said. I looked down. The bold printed words at the top of the page stabbed my eyes. Promissory note and settlement agreement. My heart pounded. I picked up the paper and read it. The content stated clearly that I, Alara Vance, agreed to a monthly payment plan to reimburse Mrs. Eleanor Hayes a sum of $16,000, which was the proceeds from the partial sale of inherited land in Ohio. At the bottom, my name was already typed, leaving only a space for a signature. I downloaded it from a legal site, Chloe added, crossing her arms. I put the paper down and looked straight at Chloe. I asked what this was. Chloe folded her arms across her chest. She asked what I was asking about. Our mother lost money, and the one who went with her to open the bank account was you, wasn't it? You're an accountant, the one who understands bank matters best in this family. Now Mom is asking you to sign an acknowledgement letter to make things clear. Is there anything wrong with that? Liam snatched the paper and read it quickly. His face turned pale. Chloe, who made this? Why is Alara's name on it? Chloe turned to her brother, her voice rising. You can still defend her, Liam? How much did Mom get from selling the land? Does anyone know about Mom's bank account besides Alara? Mom is technologically illiterate. She doesn't understand banking. Alara was the one who took her to open the account, and now the money is gone. If you don't ask her, who do you ask? Eleanor suddenly clutched her chest, tears streaming down her face with incredible speed. Oh God, my life has been so hard. I survived decades in an abusive marriage with your father. I bit my tongue and raised 2 children. I thought in my old age, selling some inherited land would give me a little money to hold on to. But instead, I get cheated by my own daughter-in-law. I get treated like dirt. I can't live in peace, and I probably won't be able to die with my eyes closed. Liam stood up straight. Mom, don't talk like that. There's no proof of anything. Eleanor slapped her thigh, crying even harder. What more proof? Money doesn't just grow legs and walk away. She's the one who held my mother's documents. She's an accountant. If she didn't take it, did a ghost take it? Hearing that, the blood in my body seemed to freeze. I had been criticized by Eleanor for being clumsy, called unsophisticated, criticized for not having children quickly, criticized for earning a lot of money and being hard to manage. But this was the first time she had directly pointed at my integrity and trampled on it. I said slowly, Eleanor, I have never touched a single cent of that money. I took you to open the account because you asked me to. I don't hold the ATM card, I don't know the PIN, and I don't have the passbook. My parents and Joliet may not be rich, but they never taught me to take a single cent of what belongs to others. Chloe smiled cynically. You speak so eloquently. You're a senior accountant. Your tongue is sharp. If you're smart, just sign this document. Agree to reimburse Mom. And we handle this as a civil family matter. If not, I will file a police report for elder financial abuse by 8 a.m. tomorrow, and I will make sure HR at Precision Ceramics gets a copy. Let your boss know whether the person handling the company's money is clean or not. I turned to look at Liam. I waited for him to say one firm sentence. Just one sentence. My wife didn't do it. But Liam looked at his crying mother, at his tense sister, and then at me. He approached me, his voice sounding miserable. Alara, I don't believe you took the money, but Mom is very emotional right now. Maybe we can calm down first. We can trace the flow of funds slowly. I laughed very quietly. You say you don't believe I took it. Then why don't you say it clearly to your mother and Chloe? I need you to stand on the side of the truth, not stand in the middle and tell me to calm down. Liam fell silent. Eleanor wiped her tears, her voice becoming cold. See? Just a few words and she's already pressuring her husband. If a woman dominates her husband too much, the household will have a hard time being peaceful. I stood up. The chair scraping against the tiled floor made a deafening sound. I looked at them one by one. I looked at Eleanor, the mother-in-law, who once made me feel pity for her bitter past. I looked at Chloe, the sister-in-law who hid a satisfied smile behind her lips. And then I looked at Liam, the husband I loved, who stood in the middle of the room like a lost person. I took my bag. I will not sign it because I did not borrow, I did not take, I do not owe. I am brave because I am right, afraid because I am wrong. If you and Chloe want to escalate this, I am ready to face it. But I warn you, slandering someone's honor is not a trivial matter that can be stopped just like that. Chloe stood up straight. Who are you threatening? I looked straight into her eyes. I am not threatening. I am just reminding you that words have a price. After saying that, I turned and walked to the door. Liam called from behind. Alara, let me take you home. I stopped but didn't turn back. No need. Tonight, you should stay here with your mother. Your mother needs someone who believes her. As for me, I need someone who believes me. I opened the door and stepped out. The cold wind hit my face. The rain had stopped, but the puddles in the alley still reflected the dim yellow lights. I got into the car, placed my hands on the steering wheel, but didn't start the engine. From inside the house behind me, Eleanor's voice was still audible, sometimes high, sometimes low, like a well-rehearsed performance. I looked through the rearview mirror, seeing Liam's silhouette standing motionless on the porch. I knew that after that dinner, a door in my heart had closed. The road from Eleanor's house to my apartment that day was not far, but I felt like I was driving through a very long stretch of my life. On both sides of the road, shops had turned on their lights. People sat in brightly lit diners, laughing and chatting after a day's work. Meanwhile, I sat in my car, both hands gripping the steering wheel. In my head, the words on that paper kept replaying. Retirement fund debt acknowledgement, $16,000. I let out a small laugh, but my throat felt bitter. In all my life as an accountant, I was most afraid of numbers without transaction proof. But today, I was the one being presented with a baseless number by my own family and forced to sign it as if my honor was only worth the stroke of a pen. When I reached the apartment basement, I turned off the car engine and sat quietly for a few minutes. The phone in my bag was vibrating continuously. Liam was calling. 1 call, 2 calls. I looked at the lit screen with his name clearly displayed but didn't answer. I didn't hate him, that's what hurt. If Liam were a bad man, it might be easier for me to let him go. But he was kind, he loved me. He just wasn't strong enough to take my side when I needed him most. Sometimes, the weakness of a loved one is more painful than the cruelty of a stranger. I went up to the apartment and opened the door. The living room was dark. The faint scent of lemongrass from the diffuser still lingered. On the TV stand was our wedding photo. Liam was wearing a gray suit, and I was in a white dress. We were both smiling as if we never knew there would be days as suffocating as this. This apartment was the result of my sweat and tears over many years. When I bought it, the price was substantial. My parents in Joliet had pooled their money, sold a small plot of land behind their house, and gave me $3,000. I took a bank loan for the rest, working day and night to pay the mortgage. Liam's job had just stabilized at that time. He could only contribute a small amount at the beginning. I still put his name as a co-owner because I thought that as husband and wife, we shouldn't keep score. I always believed that marriage is a true partnership. If a husband and wife work together, they can overcome anything. But life isn't always harmonious. I put my bag on the sofa, changed my shoes, and went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. The water flowed down my throat but couldn't calm my heart. I looked around the apartment. Suddenly, my eyes stopped on an artificial plant pot near the bookshelf. Behind its plastic leaves was a small black camera, only about half the size of a matchbox. I had installed it more than 2 months ago, not to spy on my husband. I never suspected Liam of doing anything wrong. I installed it because strange things had started to go missing in the house. A new lipstick, a bottle of perfume used only a few times, a pair of small earrings, and occasionally a few bills from the dresser drawer. The items weren't valuable enough to report to the police, but enough to make someone feel unsafe in their own home. What was strange was that the disappearances often happened right after Chloe stayed over. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. A sister-in-law visiting her brother's house. Would she really go through her sister-in-law's things? But one morning, I found an envelope with $130 in it, a wedding gift from a coworker, missing from the drawer. I asked Liam. He said he hadn't touched it. I asked Chloe. She widened her eyes, asking if I was suspecting her. My goodness. If she needed $130, she would just ask Liam. Why would she do something so embarrassing? Then she cried. Eleanor found out and called me, scolding me harshly. She questioned what kind of daughter-in-law I was, being so calculative with my sister-in-law. She said Chloe was still young and immature. Even if she took it by mistake, it was still family. I shouldn't act like there was a thief in the house. Since then, I kept quiet, but I installed the camera. I opened my laptop and accessed the data storage software. The screen displayed several recordings sorted by time. My heart beat slower, each beat felt distinct. I didn't know what I was looking for, but my gut told me that tonight's debt acknowledgement letter didn't just appear out of thin air. I replayed the data from the last 3 days. One afternoon, Eleanor came to my house after a hospital visit. She left a folder with documents in a small drawer, afraid she might drop it on the way. I remember her telling me to please keep her ATM card and ID. She said her eyesight was poor, and she was afraid of losing them. I stored them very carefully at the time, locking the drawer. But since they were my mother-in-law's documents, I didn't touch them again. The screen showed normal recordings. Me coming home from work, Liam making coffee, Chloe stopping by one evening, sitting and scrolling on her phone before leaving. Nothing strange. I kept playing until I reached a recording at 3:12 a.m. 2 days ago. Suddenly, there was movement on the screen. The main door opened slightly. I held my breath. A shadow entered very slowly. The infrared camera made the image black and white, but from the posture, the shoulder-length haircut, and the short jacket, I recognized her immediately. Chloe. She was walking barefoot, holding her phone with the flashlight on. Her movements were so light that without the camera, no one would have known someone had snuck into the house in the middle of the night. Chloe didn't go to the kitchen or the guest room. She walked straight to the low wooden cabinet next to the bookshelf. I watched her open the drawer. I watched her rummage through Eleanor's brown folder. I watched her take out an ID card and an ATM card, lift them under the phone's flashlight, and then quickly put them in her jacket pocket. My chest felt like it was being crushed. Chloe closed the drawer, straightened the tablecloth on top of it, and then turned towards the door. Before leaving, she looked around the living room one last time. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. That faint smile sent a chill down my spine. I replayed the recording again and again. There was no mistake. I took my phone, recorded the laptop screen, and downloaded the original video to a USB drive. Not feeling secure enough, I sent a copy to my personal email, changing the file name to October Electric Bill to prevent anyone from accidentally seeing it. Just then, the doorbell rang. I was startled. Looking at the intercom screen, I saw Liam standing outside. His hair was wet from the drizzle, his face tired. He must have come straight from his mother's house. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Liam looked at me, his voice hoarse. "You came home, why didn't you answer my calls?" I stepped aside, letting him in. I needed some peace. He entered, looked around, then placed his keys on the table. After a long moment, he finally said his mother was crying nonstop. Chloe also kept saying I was deliberately evading. I laughed, but my eyes didn't. "So, what do you think?" Liam looked at me for a very long time. "I don't believe you took the money, but I also don't dare to say Mom is wrong." He looked down. That answer was in his silence. I wanted to open the laptop right away, to throw the video in his face, to ask him if his sister sneaking into our house in the middle of the night to take an ATM card would still make him tell me to be calm. But I held back. I understood Liam. If he saw this recording now, he would run to his mother's house. Ask his mother. Ask Chloe. He loved his mother too much, too easily swayed by Eleanor's tears. Just with Chloe crying and Eleanor clutching her chest, everything could fall apart before I had enough evidence. Then they would erase their tracks, change the story, and turn the tables as if I were the one who installed the camera to frame my sister-in-law. I couldn't be reckless. People say anger clouds judgment. And right now, what I needed most was not tears or arguments. I needed proof. I poured a glass of water for Liam and placed it on the table. "Just rest. You still have to work tomorrow." He took my hand. "Alara, you're angry with me, aren't you?" I looked at his hand. The hand that had fixed my hairdryer, that had made me chicken noodle soup when I had a fever, that had held my hand through the days of paying off the mortgage. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't return his grip either. "I'm not angry because you love your mother. I'm just hurt because you love your mother so much you forget that I also need to be protected." Liam was stunned. He was about to say something but ended up just sighing. That night, he slept on the sofa. Meanwhile, I sat in the bedroom, rewatching the video one more time. Each frame was like a cold puzzle piece in my palm. Eleanor's ATM card had been taken by Chloe. The money was gone. A debt acknowledgement had been prepared, and I, who had once taken Eleanor to open the account, became the easiest name for them to blame. I turned off the screen and drew the curtains. Outside, the rain started again, pattering on the balcony. I stood in the darkness and told myself, "Alara, from now on, no more crying. If you want to protect your dignity, you have to hold your own light." Tomorrow morning, the first place I needed to go was the bank. The next morning, I woke up when the sky was still dim. I had barely slept, but strangely, my head felt clearer than usual. Maybe when someone is pushed into a corner, the tears dry up on their own. What's left is the instinct for self-preservation. In the living room, Liam was already awake, who knows since when. He sat on the sofa. On the table was a cup of black coffee, untouched. Seeing me come out, he stood up. "Alara, are you working today? Let me drive you." I looked at him. His eyes were swollen. He must not have slept either. My heart ached a little, but then the 3 a.m. camera footage flashed clearly in my mind again. "I'm taking a half day, I have some business to attend to." Liam immediately asked what kind of business, offering to accompany me. I shook my head. "Not yet. I'll let you know if I need you." He moved closer, his voice low. "Alara, I know I made you sad yesterday, but please don't keep it all to yourself." I was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "If you don't want me to keep it to myself, you first have to learn to stand up straight. I can't be blamed while also having to pull you out from under your mother's tears." That sentence stunned Liam. I didn't want to hurt him, but there are words that, if not spoken, will let the wound continue to fester. I changed into a dark blue work outfit, tied my hair up neatly, put the USB in my bag, and drove to a bank branch in the South Loop. That was where, 6 months ago, I had taken Eleanor to open an account. That day, she had complained that her eyesight was poor, and she didn't understand complicated banking matters, so she asked me to accompany her. I only helped her fill in some basic information. The signature, fingerprint, and PIN were all done by her in front of the bank officer. But now, precisely because I had accompanied her, I was being made the scapegoat. The bank was quite busy in the morning. There were people depositing, withdrawing, waiting to get a card. The sound of printers, queue number announcements, and officers serving customers filled the air. I took a number and sat down to wait, my hands clasped over my bag. Inside was the USB with the video of Chloe. When my turn came, I asked to meet with the customer service manager. The teller looked at me a bit strangely, but after I briefly explained that there was a potential legal dispute regarding an account in Eleanor Hayes' name, she quickly led me into a small room. A woman in her 40s greeted me. Her demeanor was calm. "Please tell me the problem, ma'am. We will help as far as regulations allow." I placed my ID on the table and explained that 6 months ago, I had accompanied my mother-in-law, Eleanor Hayes, to open an account here. I only helped fill in the data because she was elderly. I was not a joint account holder, was not authorized to withdraw money, and did not know the PIN. Now, my husband's family was accusing me of taking money from that account. I needed confirmation from the bank about my role that day. The customer service manager listened attentively. She asked her staff to check the archives, match the account opening documents, the card handover records, and all confirmation signatures. I sat waiting, my heart beating slowly. Not because I was afraid I was wrong, but because I understood that a piece of paper with an official stamp was currently more valuable than 100 sentences of defense. About 20 minutes later, she returned and placed a printed sheet of paper in front of me. "Mrs. Vance, according to our bank's records, you were only an accompanying person who helped the customer fill in some initial information. The account owner is Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. There is no power of attorney given to you to withdraw money, transfer funds, or perform any transactions on that account. We can provide an official letter confirming this." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you, ma'am. I need that letter." She looked at me, her voice softening. "Family matters can be complicated, can't they, ma'am? But when it comes to money, it's best to let the evidence speak. You did the right thing by coming here first." I gave a bitter smile. "Yes, ma'am. I'm an accountant, so I can only trust transaction records." Holding the letter with its red stamp, my heart felt a little stronger. The letter wouldn't erase the slander, but it was the first brick in building a wall to defend my honor. I stepped out of the bank. The rain had stopped. Thin sunlight shone on the still wet sidewalk. I intended to find a nearby coffee shop to sit and organize all the evidence when my eyes suddenly fell on a real estate agency across the street. Through the clear glass, I saw Chloe. She was sitting on a brown sofa, legs crossed, flipping through a brochure. In front of her, a man in a white shirt, likely a real estate agent, sat. On the table lay the floor plan of a small condo. Next to Chloe was a luxurious-looking black handbag with a shiny metal logo. I didn't know much about branded goods, but I knew enough to tell that bag wasn't a $130 item bought online. I stood still for a few seconds. Someone who just last month was complaining to Liam that her sales were slow and asking her brother to transfer her money for capital was now sitting pretty, looking at condos while carrying an expensive bag. Life is full of miracles, but miracles like this usually don't fall from the sky. They come from hidden hands. I crossed the street and stood right in front of the glass. Perhaps feeling my gaze, Chloe turned her head. Our eyes met. She wasn't surprised. Instead, she smiled. A smile as thin as a razor blade. She said something to the agent, then picked up her bag and stepped outside. Well, what a coincidence! Is Alara looking for property too? I looked straight at the bag in her hand. I was just at the bank. The smile on Chloe's face stiffened, but she quickly regained her composure. Oh, right. You must be preparing your defense. Well, you're an accountant. Everything needs proof. But family matters can't always be solved with paper. I asked calmly, Chloe, your new bag is nice. How much was it? She stroked the surface of her bag, deliberately turning the logo towards me. My boyfriend bought it for me. When someone cares, they buy you things. Why are you looking at it like that? Don't tell me you think everyone with a nice bag got it by taking their mother's money. I smiled faintly. I didn't say that. You said it yourself. Chloe's expression changed slightly. She pulled me to a corner near the coffee shop, her voice low but sharp. Alara, let me tell you something. You're smart, but don't forget, Liam loves Mom more than anyone in the world. If Mom cries a little, he won't stand by. Just give in. Admit to the $16,000. Just say you used it to renovate your parents' house. The family will still protect your reputation. I looked at my sister-in-law in front of me, still with a face full of makeup, still with a voice sweet on the outside but poisonous on the inside. My heart no longer trembled. And if I don't admit it, then what? Chloe smirked. Then you'll lose more than just money. You'll ruin your reputation at work, embarrass yourself in front of relatives, maybe even lose your husband. Your apartment is also in Liam's name. Don't think you have full control. Every word from Chloe fell like hot grains of sand. But instead of getting angry, I saw the conspiracy more clearly. They didn't just want me to confess to the debt. They wanted to use my honor as a rope to bind me, to make me afraid of losing my husband, my home, and my job, and then to make me bow down. I looked at the black bag in her hand and said slowly, Chloe, what goes around comes around. This bag is nice, but my advice is to keep it safe. Who knows? One day this very bag might be the one to point out its true owner. Chloe's face turned pale. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening. I'm just reminding you. Clean money feels light when you spend it. If the money isn't clean, it feels heavy even when you wear it on your body. After saying that, I turned and walked away. Behind me, Chloe stood still for a few seconds, then hurriedly took out her phone and called someone. Without needing to hear, I could already guess who was on the other end. Eleanor. I went into the coffee shop, chose a hidden corner, opened my bag, and placed the bank's letter on the table. Outside the glass window, people were still bustling by. I looked at the red-stamped paper, and then remembered the black bag in Chloe's hand. The puzzle pieces were starting to come together. The ATM card taken at 3 a.m., Chloe looking at condos, a new luxury bag, a debt letter forcing me, threats about my job, husband, and apartment. I took my phone, photographed the letter, and saved it in a special folder. Then I sent a message to my own number as a reminder. From today on, don't argue with tears. Speak only with evidence. Outside, the late autumn sun shone on the still damp streets. But inside my heart, another storm was beginning to form. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The Chicago sky felt clearer after the rain, but the late autumn chill was still in every gust of wind that passed through the row of trees in front of the gate. I parked my car in the basement, grabbed my bag, and double-checked the bank letter in the folder before stepping into the elevator. Although I thought I could at least work in peace today, as soon as I walked through the glass doors of Precision Ceramics Incorporated, I immediately felt a different atmosphere. The receptionist, who was usually always cheerful when she saw me, that day just mumbled a good morning, before looking down at her computer screen, not daring to meet my eyes for long. Near the coffee machine, 2 staff members from the sales division were whispering. When they saw me walk by, they immediately fell silent. One pretended to look at his phone, the other held a paper cup and hurried towards the stairs. I'm not an overly sensitive person, but working as an accountant for years has made me accustomed to noticing small details in people's behavior. There are numbers that can speak, and there are also gazes that can accuse. I had just put my bag on my desk when the head of HR, a woman a few years older than me, came into my office. She was usually calm and rarely looked nervous, but that day her face seemed very tense. Alara, Mr. Thompson wants to see you in his office now. I looked at her, asking what it was about. She hesitated. You should just go there first. Mr. Thompson is waiting. I nodded, taking the folder from my bag. For some reason, as I walked up the stairs, I could already guess this had something to do with Chloe. The look in her eyes last night when she was on the phone behind me wasn't the look of someone who was scared. It was the look of someone who had just decided to pour gasoline on a fire. The director's office was on the next floor. I knocked on the door. From inside, Mr. Thompson's deep voice said to come in. Mr. Thompson sat behind his desk. In front of him were several printed sheets of paper. He was 52 years old and a man I greatly respected. When I first joined this company, he had said one thing I always remembered. Working with money, being smart isn't enough. You have to be clean. Because of that sentence, for 7 years at this company, I had never allowed myself to miscalculate, not even for a single small invoice. Seeing me enter, Mr. Thompson took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Alara, sit down. I sat in the chair in front of him. He pushed the papers towards me. This morning, an anonymous email was sent to the company's internal list, reaching the board of directors, HR, and several department heads. It's about you. I took the papers and read them. Each line felt like a stab to my eyes. The sender accused me of being a disloyal daughter-in-law, taking advantage of my elderly mother-in-law to steal her $16,000 retirement money from a land sale. The email also wrote that someone who would dare to take money from their own mother-in-law could not be trusted to hold the position of senior accountant. At the end of the letter, the anonymous sender asked the company to review the professional ethics of Alara Vance before a greater loss occurred. I finished reading and put the paper down. My hands were cold, but my voice remained calm. Sir, the entire content of this email is slander. Mr. Thompson looked at me for a very long time. His gaze was not judgmental, but it wasn't easily trusting either. I've worked with you for 7 years. I know your character, but this matter has been sent to many people in the company, and your position is very sensitive. I need to hear your detailed explanation. I opened my bag, took out the letter from the bank, and placed it on the table. This is the letter the bank gave me yesterday morning. My mother-in-law is the account owner. I was just an accompanying person who helped fill out the form when she opened the account. I have no right to withdraw money, transfer funds, or perform any transactions. This is my personal bank statement for the last 6 months. There is not a single transaction of $16,000 that came in. Mr. Thompson took each document and examined it. The room became silent. Only the sound of the air conditioner could be heard. A moment later, he nodded slowly. The documents are clear. I believe what you've given me. But Alara, you also understand the principle of risk management. When a senior accountant is caught up in a financial rumor, whether true or false, the company must still take temporary measures. I looked at him. You can just say it, sir. I understand. Mr. Thompson sighed. Starting today, the company will temporarily suspend your sole approval authority for large transactions. Digital signatures for transfers will require additional confirmation from the assistant finance director. Your position and salary remain the same. This is not a disciplinary action, but is to protect you and the company until this matter is resolved. If it were someone else, I might have felt humiliated. But I had been in this profession long enough to understand that trust in the financial world is not just based on feelings but also on procedures. I nodded. I will comply. But I want to affirm that I will resolve this matter legally. I will not let a personal problem affect the company. Mr. Thompson looked at me, his voice softening. I hope you are strong. In this profession, losing money can be earned back, but losing a reputation is difficult. If you need the company to provide a statement about your performance, just let me know. That sentence made my eyes feel hot. At a time when my own family wanted to push me into the mud, at least there was an outsider who looked at me fairly. I stood up and bowed my head slightly. Thank you, sir. When I returned to the accounting department, everyone immediately fell silent. The room, which was usually always bustling with the sound of keyboards, printers, and calls for document verification, was now eerily quiet. I walked straight to my desk, placed the folder, and instead of sitting down immediately, I stood and looked around the room. Everyone, I need a few minutes. All eyes were on me. Some were confused. Some were curious. Some looked down as if afraid of being called out. I said slowly, I'm sure you all have heard or read the anonymous email this morning. I will only say this once. I, Alara Vance, did not take a single cent from my mother-in-law. The content of that email is slander. I have submitted the bank's letter and my personal bank statements to the board of directors. No one spoke, I continued. I have worked here for 7 years. You all know my character and how I manage finances. You can judge for yourselves. I'm not forbidding you from wondering, but I ask that you do not become a loudspeaker to spread someone else's lies. Words are light when spoken, but when they fall on someone's honor, their weight is very heavy. A young staff member named who had joined just over a year ago, stood up hesitantly. Just yesterday, you asked me to revise an expense report because of a $2 discrepancy. Someone like you wouldn't do something like that. A small murmur went through the room. Some people looked down with ashamed faces. I looked at Nina and nodded slightly. Thank you, Nina. Now, let's get back to work. It's the end of the month. The documents won't enter the books by themselves just because of my personal problems. That sentence made a few people smile faintly. The tense atmosphere in the room eased a little. A warehouse accountant said quietly, "Yes, Mrs. Vance, if you stop checking documents, we're the ones who will be in trouble." I smiled too, a faint smile, but enough to keep my back straight. Sitting at my desk, I opened my computer. The internal email inbox still had several work emails waiting. I started answering them one by one, as if nothing had happened this morning. But behind that calm facade, my heart was growing colder. Chloe had crossed the line. Slander within the family I could endure while looking for evidence. But when she touched my job, the fruits of my labor that I had built with sweat, that was a different story. One can be poor in money, poor in possessions, but one should not be so poor in conscience as to make another person's honor a plaything. Around noon, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. You see? This is just the beginning. If you comply, there's still time. I stared at the message, not replying. I took a screenshot and saved it to my evidence folder. Then I opened a drawer and put the bank letter into a red folder. On the cover, I wrote 3 words in black ink. The $16,000 case. From that moment on, I no longer considered this a fight between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law at home. This was a battle to protect my honor, my job, and the peace of my parents. I told myself, whoever sows the wind will, sooner or later, reap the whirlwind. And starting today, I would not let any storm drag me away as long as the truth was in my hands. That night, I came home later than usual. The downtown traffic was heavy. A light drizzle stuck to the windshield. Inside the car, I turned the AC on low, but my hands were still cold. The red folder on the passenger seat felt like a heavy, silent, but painful stone. When I arrived at the apartment, I saw the lights were on. Liam was already home. On the dining table, there was a plate of roasted vegetables, a bowl of mashed potatoes, and baked salmon, all simple dishes I usually liked. He came out of the kitchen, his voice softer than usual. "You're home. I made dinner. You must not have eaten properly all day." If it were any other day, I would have felt warm. But today, after the cold stares at the office, after the anonymous email that tarnished my professional reputation, a warm bowl of rice wasn't enough to ease the tightness in my chest. I put my bag on the sofa, took out the red folder, and placed it on the table. "Liam, my office received an anonymous email today." His hand stopped. "What email?" I opened the folder and handed him the printout Mr. Thompson had given me. Liam read every line, his face growing darker and darker. When he got to the part that said I was unfit to handle the company's finances, his hand crumpled the paper. "Who sent this?" I looked at him. "Who do you think?" Liam looked up, his eyes red with anger, but there was still a hint of doubt in them, as if he didn't dare to say the name. "Chloe." I didn't answer. I just took out the bank letter and my personal bank statements and placed them in front of him. "I've already submitted all of this to the director. Mr. Thompson believes me, but the company still has to temporarily suspend my major approval authority until everything is clear." Liam stood up straight. "This has gone too far. Why bring a family problem to your office? I'm calling Chloe now." He grabbed his phone and dialed his sister's number. I sat silently, not stopping him. There are things that, if I say them, he would think I'm being cynical about his family. Let his own ears hear, his own eyes see. Then he will know that what is called family can sometimes stab very deeply. The phone rang a few times before Chloe answered. Liam put it on speaker. "Liam, why are you calling at this hour?" Chloe's voice still sounded casual, as if nothing had happened. Liam controlled his voice. "Chloe, that anonymous email sent to Alara's office, you sent it, didn't you?" On the other end, there was a moment of silence, then Chloe laughed. "Liam, What are you talking about? Do I have nothing better to do than send emails? Did Alara complain to you again? She's really good at turning things on me. Liam slammed the table. Don't play dumb. Besides our family, who knows about the $16,000? Who knows where Alara works? Who has a reason to bring her down? Chloe's voice rose. Liam, now you're defending your wife and always suspecting your own sister. Mom really did lose the money. Alara was the one who took her to the bank. Now the money is gone. I just want to find justice for Mom. As for the email, you should ask Alara. Maybe she sent it herself to get sympathy. I looked at Liam. His face was pale with anger. You're going too far, Chloe. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the other end of the line. Then Eleanor's choked voice was heard. Liam, you're yelling at your sister again for your wife. Liam was stunned. Mom. Eleanor immediately started crying on the phone. Her crying wasn't as loud as at the dinner table the other day, but a long, soft sob, like the sound of a dull knife slicing the heart of a son who had loved his mother his whole life. I really lost the money, son. I'm old. How many years do I have left? My whole life, I was beaten and belittled by your father. There were times when I was holding both of you. I felt like jumping into a river to end it all. I endured everything for you. Now I have a little money for my old age, and even that is gone. Don't you feel sorry for me? So why are you joining your wife in blaming your sister? Liam closed his eyes, his hand holding the phone trembling slightly. Mom, I'm not saying you're lying, but there's no proof yet. We can't just blame it all on Alara. Eleanor sobbed. So you mean I'm making up stories to frame my own daughter-in-law? I'm your mother. I raised you. Is that it? Hearing that sentence, my heart sank. Eleanor knew exactly how to pull Liam to her side. She didn't need logic. She used past tears and the merit of raising her children as a rope to bind her son. Chloe chimed in. Liam, wake up. Alara is good with words. If you keep defending her, and something happens to Mom, don't regret it. Liam opened his eyes, his voice hoarse but firmer. Chloe, don't use Mom's health to threaten me. I will get to the bottom of this. If Alara didn't take it, the person who slandered her must apologize. Chloe laughed cynically. Go ahead and look. When the truth comes out, don't blame me for not warning you. The call ended. The kitchen was quiet. The oven timer beeped softly. The aroma of baked salmon felt so simple and strange between us. Liam placed his phone on the table, his shoulders slumped. He pulled out a chair and sat in front of me, his hands clasped together. Alara, I'm sorry. I didn't look at him right away. I folded the email printout again, smoothing the edges he had crumpled. What are you sorry for? He choked. For letting you bear all this alone. I looked up. For the first time in days, I looked straight into my husband's eyes without hiding my disappointment. Liam, I know you love your mother. I once loved your mother too. A woman who was beaten and belittled by her husband, who wouldn't feel pity hearing that? But don't you see? Your mother is using her suffering to force everyone to yield to her. She cries, and you melt. She brings up the past, and you feel guilty. Meanwhile, I'm being slandered, dragged to my office, seen as a thief. What am I supposed to do? Liam looked down. I don't know what to do. I smiled sadly. Not knowing what to do is also a choice, Liam. And your choice to remain silent is hurting me. He looked up, his eyes redder. I don't want to hurt you. But you're letting me get hurt. That sentence fell between us, light but as heavy as a stone. Liam didn't argue. He stood up and walked to the balcony. I watched his back through the glass door. Outside, the drizzle fell sideways under the apartment lights. He stood there for a very long time, hands on the railing, head down. I knew a war was raging inside him. On one side, the image of his mother in the past, beaten by her husband, hugging her children while crying in a poor kitchen. On the other side, his wife in the present, being pushed into a corner by his own mother and sister. Liam's difficulty wasn't that he couldn't distinguish right from wrong. His difficulty was that he was too afraid to admit that the mother he loved could also be wrong. A moment later, he came back inside. His voice was quiet, but no longer evasive like before. Alara, give me some time. I will talk to Mom and Chloe directly. I won't let this issue slide like before. I looked at him. My heart didn't fully trust him, but I also didn't want to extinguish the small change that had just appeared. I don't need you to make all sorts of promises. I just need that when the truth comes out, you don't close your eyes. Liam nodded. I understand. I stood up, took a bowl, and served the food. It had cooled down a bit, but was still warm. I placed one plate in front of him, one for myself. We ate in silence. There was no longer the usual tenderness, but it wasn't so cold that we turned our backs on each other. That night, Liam didn't go to sleep right away. He sat in the living room for a very long time, looking at old messages from his mother on his phone, then looking towards the bedroom where I lay. I knew he was remembering every time Eleanor had cried, every time Chloe had complained, and every time I had silently swallowed my bitterness. Meanwhile, I lay with my back to the door, eyes open in the dark. I didn't want my husband to be a bad son. I just hoped he understood that being devoted isn't a blindfold in the face of a loved one's mistakes. Because there are mothers who have suffered, but if they cannot let go of past wounds, they will unknowingly turn themselves into the cause of suffering for the next generation. That night, amidst the very soft sound of drizzle on the balcony, I heard Liam sigh in the living room. The first crack in his blind devotion had appeared. But for a crack to become a light, it still had to wait for the person inside to be brave enough to open the door wide. Saturday morning, I was at home when my phone rang. It was my mother. Alara, Chloe is here. She's standing outside the diner threatening to call the health department and the IRS on us. My hands went cold. I drove to Joliet like a madwoman. On the way, my phone buzzed with notifications. 1. Star reviews popping up on my parents' Yelp page, posted from fake accounts, claiming the owners funded their diner with stolen retirement money. When I arrived, Chloe was standing by her car right outside the diner's entrance. There were no aunts, just her, glaring at the front door. My father was standing on the porch, his face stern, holding his phone to his ear. You have 3 seconds to get off my property before I have the police arrest you for trespassing and harassment, he told her firmly. My mother stood behind him, looking stressed but refusing to back down. As soon as she saw me, Chloe raised her voice. Oh, the main character has arrived. Alara, you've come at the perfect time. Go on, tell everyone here. Where did you hide my mother's $16,000? I walked straight over and helped my mother up. Mom, I'm home. Look at me, Mom. Don't be afraid. My mother held my hand. Her hand was ice cold. Alara, I didn't take anyone's money. I told them, but they don't believe me. My throat tightened. I know, Mom. This whole neighborhood knows how you and Dad live. One of the aunts put her hands on her hips, her voice screeching. We know the person, we know their face, but who knows their heart? The daughter is an accountant, smart with money, and the parents are poor. It's only natural to be greedy. I turned to look at her. Martha, you are older than me, and I have always respected you. But for every sentence you utter, you must be prepared to be held accountable later. The other aunt, Helen, sneered. Ha, threatening with the law. Already in the wrong and still so stubborn. Chloe stepped forward, deliberately speaking louder so the whole street could hear. Alara, don't think that just because you're a senior accountant you can twist the facts. My mother is old. She doesn't understand banking. That's why you could deceive her. I came here today to demand justice. I looked at her. Usually, Chloe was well-dressed, her voice as sweet as honey. Today, in the middle of this narrow street, she had transformed into a completely different person, cruel and triumphant. I took a deep breath, then pointed to the corner of the store's porch roof. Chloe, look up there. Chloe fell silent. The aunts looked up too. In the corner of the porch, a small CCTV camera blinked with a red light. It was a camera I had installed for my parents last year after a few minor thefts in the neighborhood. I spoke each word clearly. From the moment you entered, screaming and slandering, kicking over merchandise and insulting my parents in front of the neighbors, everything has been recorded, both video and audio. I will take the recording and hand it over to the police. Slander, public humiliation, causing a disturbance, and property damage. These are not problems that can be solved just by crying. The crowd started whispering. A neighbor, a man, spoke up. I've lived here for decades. Mr. and Mrs. Vance have never owed anyone a penny. If there's a problem, solve it through legal channels. Don't come here screaming to shame people like this. Chloe's face turned a little pale, but she still tried to argue. I'm just telling the truth. Just then, Liam's pickup truck screeched to a halt in front of the diner. He jumped out, the car door left wide open. He saw my parents standing their ground and his sister looking furious on the sidewalk. Chloe, step back right now. Chloe frowned. Liam, you came at the perfect time. Look at what your wife has done. Liam strode forward and stood between her and my parents. I said, be quiet. Chloe was aghast, her eyes wide. You yelled at me? For her? You yelled at me? Liam looked at his sister, his voice trembling with anger. These are my wife's parents, which makes them our parents too. If you have suspicions, take your proof to the police. No one gave you the right to come to their private business, post fake reviews, and harass them. Chloe bit her lip, her voice low but still venomous. You defend your wife so much, you don't need your mother anymore. Liam looked at her for a long, long time. I love Mom. But loving Mom doesn't mean I let you trample on anyone you want. I stood beside my mother, watching Liam. For the first time, I saw him not avoiding the issue. Not saying be patient, not saying Mom has suffered, not standing in the middle with his usual helplessness. He had chosen to say the right thing at the right time. My mother cried. Not the stressed tears from before, but tears of relief. She held my hand and then looked at Liam. Liam, our family may not be rich, but we have never taken what belongs to others. Just you understanding us is enough to make us happy. Liam looked down, his voice choked. I'm sorry, Mom, Dad. This is my fault for not being able to manage our household affairs well, to the point of causing you to be shamed. Hearing that sentence, my heart both melted and ached. An apology, though late, was still better than silence. But the scratch on my parents' honor couldn't be wiped away as easily as cleaning up fallen cookie packages. Chloe, seeing the situation turn, stormed back to her car. Before leaving, she turned back and gave me a sharp glare, then sped off. I said nothing, just walked up the porch to hug my parents. The owner of the hardware store next door, who had stepped out to see the commotion, called out, Don't let her get to you, Mr. Vance. If you need a witness for the police, I saw the whole thing. My father nodded at him in appreciation. A moment later, my father came home. Seeing the scene in front of the store, he didn't ask many questions. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said quietly, Alara, our family is poor, but we are not disgraceful. Don't let anyone force you to bow your head when you've done nothing wrong. That sentence made my eyes hot. I turned towards Liam. He stood silently near the door, his face full of regret. I knew that today he had taken one step forward, but ahead of him was still his mother, still Chloe, still the $16,000 whose fund flow was unclear, still traps that my gut told me they would not stop setting. The afternoon sky suddenly cleared. Sunlight shone on the camera on the porch, on the restacked goods, and on my mother's wrinkled face, still wet with tears. I clutched my bag tightly. If they had dragged my parents into this, I had no reason to be lenient anymore. After tidying up the store, I took my mother inside to rest. She sat on an old recliner, her hands still trembling. I poured her a glass of warm water and sat beside her. Mom, don't think too much about this. Let me handle it. My mother looked at me, her eyes red. Alara, I'm just afraid you'll suffer. Being a daughter-in-law but hated by your husband's family. A woman's fate is hard, dear. I held my mother's hand. Her hand was thin, her knuckles rough from decades of selling goods and cooking. Hard is not as scary as bearing slander, Mom. I can endure a harsh word or two, but I can't let others smear soot on your and Dad's faces. My father stood by the door, brewing strong tea. He didn't say much, just looked at me and nodded. Whatever you're going to do, be sure, don't be rash. A righteous person must walk a straight path, but even on a straight path, you have to watch out for potholes. My father's words made me smile faintly. Amidst a heavy heart, his simple humor felt like a sip of warm tea on a cold day. I said goodbye to my parents and drove straight towards downtown Chicago. In my bag was the USB, with the recording of Chloe sneaking into the house, the bank letter, my personal bank statements, photos of the threatening messages, and the recording of the incident in front of the diner. I knew it wasn't enough yet, but at least I was no longer fighting empty-handed. The law office was on the 7th floor of a small building. The lead partner, David, was an old friend from college. I was in accounting, he was in law. In college, David was known for being a man of few words, but his arguments were as sharp as a knife. Friends often joked that anyone who debated David didn't need to wait for a court verdict to feel they were wrong. I rang the bell. The door opened. David stood there in a white shirt holding a folder. When he saw me, he was stunned. Alara, you look so pale. Come in. I sat down, accepting a warm cup of tea from him. Before I could drink it, my throat tightened. Not because I wanted to cry, but because after days of having to be strong in front of my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, colleagues, and relatives, suddenly sitting in front of someone who could listen to me with logic, I realized just how tired I was. David placed his notebook on the table. Tell me from the beginning. Don't leave out any details. I told him everything, from Liam's phone call The dinner at Eleanor's, the $16,000 debt letter, Chloe's threats, the 3:12 a.m. camera recording, the bank letter, the anonymous email at work, to the incident where Chloe brought a bullhorn to shame my parents. David listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting something down. When I played the video of Chloe sneaking in and taking the ATM card, his expression turned serious. Your sister-in-law is not simple. Where did you save the original file? One on a USB, one in my personal email, and another on an external hard drive. Good. Never give the original file to anyone except the authorities or your lawyer. And the recording in front of your parents' store? I opened my phone. The image of Chloe holding the bullhorn, the aunt standing beside her, and my mother trembling in a plastic chair. It was all clear. David finished watching and sighed. This is no longer a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law dispute. There are criminal elements of slander, public defamation, and disorderly conduct. And if it's later proven they fabricated false evidence, the problem could be more serious. I put down the teacup. David, I don't want to send anyone to jail, but they've touched my parents. They've touched my job. I have no other choice. David looked at me, his voice slow. Defending yourself with the law is not a malicious act, Alara. What's malicious is knowing someone is innocent but continuing to slander them. After a moment of silence, I opened a small compartment in my bag and took out a white plastic envelope. I had kept it for 3 years, neatly laminated. I had saved it not to be calculative, but because as an accountant, I was used to every inflow and outflow of money being clear. I pushed the envelope towards David, and this. David opened it. Inside was a notarized promissory note with Eleanor's signature. The date was complete. The amount was $4,200. David raised an eyebrow. Eleanor owes you money? I nodded. 3 years ago, Chloe got involved in an MLM scheme, accumulated a lot of product, and fell into debt. Eleanor took out a massive high-interest personal loan from a predatory online lender to help Chloe but couldn't make the payments. The collection agency threatened to place a lien on her house. My mother-in-law came to my house crying, saying if she lost her home, she would have nowhere to go. Liam was also at a loss at the time. His salary wasn't much. I felt sorry for my mother-in-law, so I took my savings. I gave her $4,200 to redeem the title. David read every line carefully. There was a notary seal, a due date, a signature, very solid. I smiled sadly. At that time, Eleanor held my hand, saying a daughter-in-law was better than her own child. She promised that once the land was sold, she would pay me back first. But now that the land is sold, not only did she not pay, but she and Chloe accused me of taking her pension money. David put the letter down, his gaze sharpening. Alara, this letter is very important. It reverses your position. Right now, the one with the obligation to pay is Eleanor. As for their accusation that you took $16,000, they are the ones who have to prove it. They can't just cry and force someone to confess. I asked, so what should I do now? David took a blank piece of paper and wrote down a few points. First, make certified copies of all messages, emails, and videos. Second, send a cease and desist letter demanding that Eleanor and Chloe stop the defamation and issue a public apology. Third, prepare a police report if they continue. Fourth, for this $4,200 debt, you can file a civil suit to demand payment plus interest according to the agreement or regulations. Hearing each point, my mind slowly cleared. Life is sometimes like a tangled thread, but as long as you find the right end, everything can be unraveled. David continued, but you must remember, don't reveal all your evidence at once. People who are fabricating a story are usually very confident when they think their opponent can only cry. Let them act further. When they cross the line, then your evidence will be strong enough to corner them. I looked out the window. On the streets, vehicles were crowded. Everyone was busy with their own stories. I remembered Liam. I remembered his look when he snatched the bullhorn from Chloe's hand. He had taken a step forward, but I didn't know if he had enough courage to go further. I signed the retainer agreement, appointing David as my legal counsel. As I put the pen down, my heart didn't feel lighter, but it felt more solid. Leaving the law office, my phone vibrated. A message from Chloe appeared on the screen. Get ready to come to Mom's birthday party, Alara. Make sure you dress nicely. It's going to be crowded with relatives. Don't embarrass yourself. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I took a screenshot and saved it in the evidence folder. After that, I replied with one short sentence. Don't worry, I'll be there. With the utmost respect. After sending it, I put my phone away. The late autumn wind blew the hem of my blouse. I knew a bigger storm was waiting. But this time, I was no longer standing alone in the middle of a raging current. In my bag, I had the truth. In my lawyer's hands, I had a case file. And in my heart, fear was beginning to be replaced by calm. That night, when I left David's law office, it was already dark. Chicago during rush hour was at a total standstill. Cars crawled under a light drizzle that looked like smoke. In my bag were a copy of Eleanor's $4,200 promissory note, the bank letter, and a list of the next steps I had to take. My logic told me I was on the right path, but my heart still felt heavy. When I got to the apartment, I saw the lights were on. Liam was home. On the dining table were roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes, and baked salmon, all simple dishes I usually liked. He came out of the kitchen, his voice softer than usual. "You're home. I made dinner. You must be tired today." I placed my bag on a chair. Yes. I stopped by my lawyer's office. His hands paused for a moment. "You went to a lawyer?" I looked at him without flinching. I had to. This has gone too far. I can't just sit around and wait for someone to show me mercy. Liam pursed his lips. He didn't object, just quietly served rice into a bowl. We ate. The atmosphere wasn't as tense as the day before, but it couldn't be called warm either. Between us now was a thin layer of glass. We could see each other, but every touch felt cold. After dinner, Liam stood up to clear the plates. "Let me wash up. You go rest." I didn't refuse. I went into the bedroom to change, gathering some jackets hanging behind the door to put in the washing machine. Among them was Liam's brown jacket that he wore yesterday when he went to Eleanor's house. As usual, I checked the pockets before washing. My hand touched a stack of folded papers. I pulled it out. At first, I thought it was a receipt or a technical diagram for his work. But when I unfolded it, the words at the top of the page made my vision go dark. Separation agreement and quitclaim deed. I stood frozen in the middle of the room. The sound of water running in the kitchen was still audible. I heard the clatter of plates, the ticking of the wall clock, but my own heartbeat seemed to have stopped. I read further. Husband, Liam Hayes. Wife, Alara Vance. In the property settlement section, it stipulated that the wife would sign over her half of the apartment to the husband and vacate the premises immediately. In the debt section, it clearly stated that a personal debt of $16,000 to Mrs. Eleanor Hayes would be the full, sole responsibility of Alara Vance to repay. My throat tightened. Every line felt as if it were written not with ink, but with a knife. For this apartment, my parents had helped with $3,000. I paid the mortgage every month, sometimes working overtime until midnight for an extra bonus. Liam did contribute, I didn't deny that. But to tell me to leave this home because of a false accusation, plus having to bear a $16,000 debt fabricated by others, it was too cruel. I brought the paper to the living room. Liam was drying his hands with a towel. When he saw my expression, he was stunned. "Alara." I placed the letter on the table. My voice was so calm it felt strange even to me. "Explain." Liam stared at the letter, his face paling. "Where did you get this?" "From your jacket pocket. I'm asking again. Explain." He raised his hand and rubbed his face, his panic evident. "Alara, it's not what you think." I laughed softly. "I haven't said what I think yet, but this letter has your name on it. My name. Our apartment. That $16,000 debt. What am I supposed to think?" Liam moved closer, about to take the letter, but I stopped him. "Don't touch it. I want to hear it from you." He stood still for a few seconds, then said quickly, "This afternoon, Mom called and asked me to come over. She and Chloe gave me this letter. Mom was crying, saying if you wouldn't confess, it would be better to just get divorced so our family wouldn't have to bear the shame." Chloe said, "Just take it for now. You can talk about it later when you're calmer." I brought it home, but I had no intention of giving it to you." I looked at him, each word coming out very slowly. "No intention yet. Doesn't mean no intention at all." Liam was at a loss for words. "I really don't want a divorce. I also don't want you to bear that debt. It's just..." At that moment, Mom was crying so hard. She said if I didn't take it, her blood pressure might go up. Chloe also called me a bad son. I was confused, so I brought it home. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Again, his mother's tears. Again, the bad son label from his sister. And again, he was the good man who always let himself be dragged along like a shadow. I asked, "If I hadn't found it, would you have torn it up?" Liam opened his mouth but didn't answer right away. That single moment of hesitation was enough. I nodded, my eyes hot. "You don't know, do you?" He quickly said, "No, That's not it. I needed time to think. While you were thinking, they had already sent an email to my office. They had already brought people to my parents' house. They had already prepared a separation agreement to kick me out of my home. Liam, how long do you need to think? My voice rose for the first time in days. Not a shout, but the voice of someone who had been under pressure for too long. Liam looked down. I'm sorry. I shook my head. I'm tired of, I'm sorry. Do you know what hurts the most? It's not that your mother hates me, not that Chloe is framing me, but that every time they raise a knife, you always say, wait a minute, let me think if this knife needs to be put away or not. Liam looked up, his eyes red. I never want them to hurt you, but you always give them the chance. The room was silent. Outside the window, the drizzle stuck to the glass in long streaks. I looked at our wedding photo on the TV stand. In the photo, Liam was smiling warmly, his hand holding mine tightly. I used to think this man might not be rich or eloquent, but he was kind enough to be my support. I never imagined there would be a day when I had to stand before him and ask if he had the courage to protect his wife from his own family. I pushed the letter towards Liam. Tear it up. He looked at me. Alara, tear it up now, in front of me. If you don't want a divorce, if you don't want me to bear this debt, tear up the letter. If you still need time to think, I'll help you decide right now. Liam took the letter, his hands trembling. He looked at each line one last time, then tore it in two. Then he tore it again until the paper was just small scraps falling onto the table. I stared at the scraps, but my heart didn't feel any lighter. Because I knew tearing up a piece of paper was much easier than tearing the invisible strings Eleanor had tied around her son's heart for decades. Liam sat in a chair, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. I know I'm a coward. I always thought if I was just patient with Mom, everything would be fine. I was afraid she would suffer again like before. But day by day, I'm realizing Mom is using her suffering to pressure me. I was silent. For the first time, he had said it with his own mouth. He continued, his voice hoarse. When Mom gave me this letter, I knew it was wrong, but I still took it. Because I was afraid she would faint, afraid Chloe would make a scene, afraid relatives would call me a terrible son. I didn't think enough about your feelings. I'm sorry. I sat in front of him. Liam, I'm not asking you to leave your mother. I never wanted that. But from today on, you are not to bring home any more papers from your mother and Chloe without telling me. No debt acknowledgements, no divorce petitions, no property agreements, nothing. This house is our house, not a place for others to throw papers at me and force me to sign. He nodded quickly. I promise. I looked at him for a long time. Don't promise just to calm me down. A promise must be kept. If there is one more time you use the word devotion to force me to bear slander, I will be the one to walk away from this marriage. Without a fuss, without holding back. Liam clasped his hands, his voice trembling. I understand. That night, he gathered the paper scraps himself and threw them in the trash. But before he did, he stared at them for a long time. I knew he wasn't just looking at a torn separation agreement. He was looking at how his devotion had been exploited by his mother and sister. And when I returned to the bedroom, I took my phone and photographed the remaining scraps on the table. Not because I didn't trust him completely, but because after all this, I had learned one thing. In the middle of a storm, trust must still walk hand in hand with proof. We often let things slide for the people we love. But if you continuously forgive others' mistakes, one day, the one who will be lost is yourself. That night, Liam didn't sleep. Neither did I. Between us, a divorce petition had been destroyed, but the wound it left was still raw, as sharp as a paper cut to the heart. The next morning, I had just finished brewing ginger tea when the phone on the table vibrated nonstop. Not a call, but dozens of notifications from Facebook. I opened the app. Eleanor had posted a long public status update, tagging several aunts and uncles. It was a textbook vague booking post, dripping with victimhood. When you sacrifice your whole life for your children, surviving an abusive marriage just to raise them right, you hope your old age will be peaceful. I sold inherited land and got $16,000 to avoid being a burden. But it turns out the person you trusted most, the one who married your son and understands banking perfectly, can take everything from you. Now she's twisting the facts, turning my own son against his mother and sister. I am heartbroken. I held the phone, speechless. Beneath Eleanor's post, the comment section began to heat up. Aunt Martha wrote, "Oh, Eleanor, praying for you. Call the police immediately." Uncle Mark from Ohio commented, Liam needs to step up and be the man of the house. Unbelievable. Then, Liam's phone started blowing up with text messages from his cousins. All variations on a theme. What's going on, Liam? Are you really letting your wife do this to your mom? Every line appeared, every letter, like a hot coal thrown at my heart. They hadn't heard a single word from me, hadn't seen a single piece of evidence, but they were already ready to judge. Words come easy when it's not your life. When it's not your own family's problem, people throw stones so lightly. Liam came out of the bedroom. He saw my expression and immediately asked, "What is it, Alara?" I handed him my phone. He read. The longer he read, the tighter his lips became. When he reached the part where Eleanor said I had brainwashed her son, he closed his eyes as if he had just been slapped. "I'll call Mom." I didn't stop him. I just turned on the screen recording feature, saving the entire group chat, every voice message, every insulting sentence. After the past few days, I understood that in a case of slander, human memory can be faulty, but evidence cannot lie. Liam called Eleanor. This time he didn't put it on speaker, but I could still hear clearly because his mother was speaking so loudly. "Mom, why did you post that status on Facebook for everyone to see? I already told you the matter isn't clear. Everyone in the comments knows you're talking about Alara." Eleanor's voice sounded sharp. "Oh, now I can't even say a few sentences? I lost money. I was cheated by my daughter-in-law. I can't complain to anyone?" "It's not that you can't, Mom, if you have proof. But you're making the whole family crucify my wife. Don't you think about her dignity?" Eleanor laughed cynically on the phone, a laugh that sounded colder than tears. "Dignity? Then who thinks about my dignity? I raised you to be this big. Now you're married and you're lecturing your mother on how to behave." Liam gripped his phone. "I'm not lecturing you, Mom. I'm just begging you not to make a bigger mistake." There was a moment of silence on the other end, then Eleanor's voice lowered, but every word was more venomous. "Liam, let me ask you honestly, is it because Alara is good at making money that you're afraid of her? Or have you been so blinded by her that you've forgotten how I used to live? I suffered my whole life because of your father. He hit me, insulted me, forced me to bow down. I still gritted my teeth for you both. Now Alara is a daughter-in-law in this house. Can't she bear a little trouble?" The whole room seemed to freeze. Liam stood stiffly, the phone still to his ear, but he couldn't say a word. I sat in my chair, hearing every word clearly. My heart suddenly turned cold to its core. It turned out Eleanor didn't just want me to be patient. She wanted me to suffer, wanted me to taste the bitterness she had once felt. As if because her life had been trampled on, her daughter-in-law's life couldn't be peaceful either. A moment later, Liam said very quietly, "Mom, do you really mean that?" Eleanor answered quickly, "Am I wrong? When a woman gets married, she should know her place. I could endure it, why can't she? Or does she think because her salary is high, she has parents who defend her, she has that apartment, that she's better than me?" Liam moved the phone away from his ear. Eleanor was still talking, but he had ended the call. He stood in the middle of the living room, his face ashen. I wasn't angry at him at that moment. I just saw in his eyes that something had just broken. All this time, Liam had clung to the image of a pitiful mother. A mother beaten by her husband, oppressed by life, pushed to the corner by poverty. He loved his mother like he loved an old wound. But that morning, his own mother had torn off the bandage, revealing that underneath there was not just a wound, but also the poison of envy and a desire to control. I asked quietly, "Liam, you heard it clearly, right? Do you still think I just need to be a little more patient for our home to be peaceful?" He shook his head very slowly. "No." On my phone, the Facebook notifications were still buzzing. Aunt Martha added another comment. "On Sunday, at the birthday party, we need to confront her directly. Don't let her keep pretending to be a victim." Right after that, Helen chimed in. "Exactly. If she shows her face, someone should just call the police right there." I took a screenshot. Liam read it too. He clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. "This Sunday, Mom is having a big party." I nodded. It seems so. They're setting the stage. Liam looked at me, his voice hoarse. "Alara, don't go. I'm afraid they'll hurt you again." I looked at him, calmer than I expected. "If I don't go, they'll say I'm running because I'm guilty. They've already set the stage. I can't let them act alone." He approached me. "I'll go with you." I looked deep into his eyes. "Just going isn't enough, Liam. When it's time to speak, you have to speak. When it's time to choose, you have to choose. I won't back down again." "I know." Just then, Liam's phone screen lit up. A message from Chloe appeared. just one short line. Liam, remember to bring Alara to Mom's party. Mom wants the whole family to see her apologize. Liam read the message and then showed it to me. I let out a small laugh, a laugh with no humor in it at all. Chloe is so confident. Liam didn't laugh. He just said, "Tonight, I'm going to Mom's house. I want to hear directly what else they're planning." I was about to say he didn't need to, but seeing his expression, I held back. There are truths that must be faced in person to be truly believed. If Liam wanted to confront his mother and sister, I wouldn't stop him. I just reminded him to be careful. Don't let tears pull him back to where he started. He nodded. This time, I want to see with my own eyes, not with pity for Mom anymore. The afternoon passed slowly. The light outside the balcony faded, enveloping the living room in a sad gray color. I sat organizing all the screenshots, saving every voice message from Eleanor into the file. The $16,000 case folder was getting fuller, Eleanor's words echoed in my head. I could endure it. Why can't she? I suddenly understood. There are people who don't just want to be loved. They want others to bow down to prove they still have power. And when that person is your mother-in-law, and the one being forced to bow is her daughter-in-law, a family tragedy begins with 2 words: patience and endurance. But I was not born to repeat Eleanor's bitter life. I am Alara Vance. I can be a good daughter-in-law, a faithful wife, but I will not let anyone turn me into the shadow of a woman who was once hurt and then became cruel. This Sunday, I will go to that party. I will arrive with honor, sit with composure, and wait to see when the mask of a mother's false affection will fall. That night, Liam said he was going to his mother's house. He wore only a thin black jacket, holding a box of blood pressure medication he had bought for Eleanor. Before leaving, he stopped and looked at me. Alara, lock the door. I'll just be a moment. I'll be back soon. I was organizing files at the table, and I looked up at him. Are you going there to question your mother, or to hear her cry again? My question made Liam freeze. He looked down, his voice low. I don't know anymore if Mom is telling the truth or not, but I want to hear and see for myself. I don't want to keep standing in the middle and hurting you. I didn't say anything. I just went to the drawer, took out a small voice recorder, and placed it in his hand. He was shocked. You want me to record my mother? I looked straight into my husband's eyes. Not to trap your mother, but so that when the truth comes out, you don't let anyone's tears make you forget. Liam gripped the recorder. A moment later, he nodded. I understand. He left. The door closed. The apartment was suddenly quiet. I stood by the window, looking down at the apartment courtyard. Liam's shadow walked past the yellow lights, growing smaller and then disappearing behind the gate. My heart was uneasy. I was afraid he would give in again. Afraid that all it would take was Eleanor clutching her chest, crying, and bringing up the times her husband beat her. Then Liam would forget that his mother was also hurting another woman. But I also knew there were doors he had to open himself. Even if I pulled him, I would only be on the outside. It was almost 11 p.m. when my phone rang. Liam. I answered it quickly. Alara, please open the door. His voice sounded strange, hoarse and panicked. I hurried to open the door. Liam stood outside, his face ashen, his hair slightly disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, as if he had just been through a storm. He came in, closed the door, and leaned against the wall. The box of blood pressure medicine was still in his hand, crushed from being held too tightly. I asked quietly, Liam, what's wrong? He didn't answer right away. He walked to the dining table and placed his phone in front of me. Listen. I looked at him and then pressed play on the latest recording. At first, there was the sound of a screen door sliding open, then Eleanor's cough. Chloe's voice came first, soft but clear. Mom, tomorrow just do exactly as I said. All the relatives will be there. Alara won't be able to argue. Eleanor replied, her voice anxious. But if the police really come, won't it be a problem? I just want her to admit she owes the money, not. Chloe cut her off. Mom, you're getting soft again. If you don't intimidate her, she'll walk all over you. Just think, she's a senior accountant, has money, has an apartment. Liam is defending her. In a few more years, will you still have a voice in this house? I sat frozen. Eleanor sighed on the recording. But you're the one who used the money. If they find out, Chloe lowered her voice. They won't find out. I've arranged everything. $10,000 for the down payment on the condo in the suburbs. The papers are in my name. They won't know the money came from your account. $4,200 to pay off that predatory lender. They got their money. they'll close the account. The rest, about $1,800, I've already withdrawn in cash. Tomorrow, I'll keep it in my bag. When you start crying, all the relatives will gather around. I'll find a way to slip the bundle of money near Alara's chair. The police will come, see the evidence, and she won't be able to deny it. Hearing that, my hands went cold. I remembered the black bag Chloe was holding when we met at the real estate office. It turned out that bag was not just a sign of greed, but a carefully prepared trap. In the recording, Eleanor was silent for a long time, then said, "What if Liam finds out?" Chloe laughed cynically. "Liam loves you the most. You just have to clutch your chest, cry, and bring up the old stories about Dad hitting you. He'll give in again. At most, he'll just tell Alara to be patient. When has he ever dared to defy you?" I didn't look at Liam, but I heard his heavy breathing beside me. Eleanor continued, her voice no longer trembling. "That Alara has been annoying me for a long time. Such a self-righteous daughter-in-law, always talking about right and wrong. I hate women who are spoiled by their husbands and then feel superior to their mothers-in-law. I survived your father beating me. She's a daughter-in-law in this house. Is it too much for her to bear a little shame?" Chloe chimed in. "Exactly, Mom. Tomorrow we'll teach her a lesson so she knows this house is not a place for her to be a queen." The recording ended with the sound of a chair being moved and Liam's ragged breathing. That must have been when he rushed out from behind the door. I sat in silence for a very long time. The apartment was quiet, only the dry ticking of the wall clock. Liam sat in the chair opposite me. He looked down, his hands covering his face. I heard everything. I was standing outside Mom's room. I brought her medicine, intending to talk to her nicely. But as soon as I got there, I heard Chloe talking about tomorrow's plan. His voice broke on the last few words. I never expected. Mom agreed to it. I looked at the man before me. He was once a little boy who stood in the kitchen watching his mother being beaten by his father. He loved his mother with all the trauma of his childhood. But tonight, his own ears had heard the mother he loved use old wounds as an excuse to torture his wife. I asked, "Now do you still think your mother just misspeaks because she's suffered too much?" Liam shook his head, tears falling through his fingers. "No, she knows what she's doing. So does Chloe." He looked up at me, his eyes red, but there was no more confusion like before. "Ilara, I'm sorry. All this time, I thought being patient with Mom was a form of devotion. I was afraid she'd be sad, afraid she'd get sick, afraid people would say I'd forgotten my mother now that I had a wife. But I forgot, behind me was you. I kept forcing you to be patient, until Mom and Chloe thought you deserved to suffer." Hearing that, my heart ached, but it was no longer weak like before. "I don't need you to cry. Tomorrow, in front of your mother, your sister, all your relatives, and even the police if they call them, you have to choose where you will stand." Liam nodded quickly. "I will stand on the side of the truth." I looked at him for a long time. "The truth could hurt your mother." He swallowed. "But if I keep silent, the one who will be trampled into the mud is you." That sentence made my nose sting. I turned my face away, not wanting my tears to fall. I had been waiting for that sentence for too long. Liam took the voice recorder out of his pocket and placed it next to the phone. "I've saved a copy to my email. I'll bring it tomorrow. If they stop, I'll give Mom a way out. But if they insist on framing you," he paused, his hand on the table clenched into a fist, "I will not let them touch you again." I stood up, opened the closet, and took out the red folder. I put in a copy of the bank letter, the bank statements, photos from the camera, and Eleanor's $4,200 promissory note. Liam saw it all, his face growing heavier. He said quietly, "You've prepared everything?" I replied, "Because I have no way to retreat." Outside the balcony, the night wind blew the curtains, making them sway gently. The city was still bright, but in our small apartment, something had just been extinguished, and something had just been ignited. Liam came closer and took my hand. This time his hand was still trembling, but it was not weak. "Alara, tomorrow I will not be silent again." I didn't return his grip tightly, but I also didn't pull my hand away. I will remember that. Sunday morning, Chicago was bright. After several days of rain, the late autumn sun wasn't scorching, just a pale yellow, falling on the balcony and making the remaining water on the railing glisten like crystals. I stood in front of the mirror, fastening the last button of my dark blue blouse. I had chosen a color that was neither too flashy nor too faded. I put my hair up in a bun. In the mirror, my face was a little pale from lack of sleep, but my eyes were very clear. Liam stood in the bedroom doorway, wearing a white shirt and black trousers. He looked at me for a moment, then said quietly, Alara, if you don't feel up to it, we don't have to go. I turned, took the red folder, and put it in my bag. If we don't go, they'll say I'm afraid. They've already set the stage. I can't let them act alone. Liam came closer, his voice heavy. I'm afraid you'll get hurt again. I looked at him. After last night, there was no more doubt in his eyes. But I knew that soon, when he stood before his own mother, his sister, and the entire extended family, he would face something far more difficult than just apologizing to me. I've already been hurt, Liam. Today what I need is not to avoid the pain but to end it. Liam nodded. He took out the phone with the audio recording from his pocket, then double-checked the small voice recorder he was carrying. It's enough, he said. I simply replied, let's go. The seafood restaurant was located on a busy downtown street. Its facade was wide with a glittering sign. From outside the door, the sound of laughter and chatter was already audible. Eleanor's family had booked a private room on the second floor. At the foot of the stairs, a large sign read, Happy 62nd birthday, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Wishing you a long and healthy life. I stared at the words, my heart feeling bitter. People wished for blessings, long life, and peace. But behind the festive red color, a trap was being set with false tears and illicit money. Liam walked beside me. As we went up the stairs, he held my elbow. A small gesture, but I could feel his cold hand. Inside the room, the relatives were almost all there. Some came from Ohio, some from different parts of Chicago. Some I had only met a few times at family events. But today, they all looked at me as if they had already memorized the crime I was accused of. The tables were covered with red tablecloths. On a small stage, there was a gold backdrop with 2 arrangements of purple orchids and yellow chrysanthemums on the sides. The smell of steamed seafood, spicy soup, and cheap perfume mixed together, making the atmosphere even more stuffy. Eleanor sat at the main table. She wore a red lace dress, a string of imitation pearls around her neck, her hair in a high bun. From a distance, she truly looked like a wise and happy mother on her special day. Seeing us enter, she was slightly taken aback, then immediately smiled. You've arrived? I thought Alara would be busy with important matters. Too busy to come to her mother-in-law's birthday. I stepped forward and placed a small gift box on the table. Happy birthday, Eleanor. I hope you have a wonderful day. Eleanor glanced at the box without opening it. She spoke loudly enough for several people around her to hear. Health depends on the blessings from children and grandchildren. If you get a good daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law lives a long life. If you get one who causes headaches, it's difficult. Several relatives laughed cynically. One of the aunts sitting near her clicked her tongue. Come on, Eleanor. It's a happy day. Don't talk about sad things. What's right and what's wrong can be discussed later when everyone is here. I heard it, but my face remained calm. I already knew they hadn't invited me to eat. Chloe walked down from the stage. She wore a maroon dress, her hair neatly styled, her makeup heavy. In her hands, she held the black bag I had seen at the real estate office. She clutched it tightly, as if it contained not lipstick or a wallet, but her entire life. Chloe smiled brightly. Alara, you look so beautiful today. It's different, isn't it? A big-shot corporate person, you have a different aura. I looked at the bag in her hand, then at her face. Your bag is nice too. Chloe's smile stiffened slightly. She hugged her bag tighter. My boyfriend bought it for me. You keep praising it, I'm getting embarrassed. I smiled. Valuable things are often looked at. Liam, standing beside me, heard that and squeezed my hand slightly. He knew what I was looking at. We were seated at a table near the stage, a very visible position. I had just sat down when I saw Mr. Thompson, my director, enter with the HR manager and 2 other colleagues. I was a little surprised, although I had suspected Chloe was capable of anything. Liam leaned over and whispered, I didn't know they invited your boss. I replied quietly, I know they want me to be shamed in front of the people who can decide my career. Mr. Thompson saw me and nodded. His gaze was calm, impartial. It made me feel a little stronger. At a more distant table, David, my lawyer, was also present. He wore a gray shirt, sitting quietly like a regular guest. When our eyes met, he just gave a small nod. No one from my husband's family knew he was my lawyer. The event began with an amateur MC, one of the nephews, reading a welcome speech. There were lines about a mother being the rock of the family, about a mother being a shelter for her children. I listened, my heart aching. The beautiful words weren't wrong. What was sad was that someone was borrowing the word devotion to force another person to bear slander. Eleanor was invited onto the stage to receive flowers. Liam also had to go up to accompany his mother. He stood beside her, his face tense. Eleanor held the microphone, her voice choked. At my age, I don't ask for anything anymore, just for my children and grandchildren to be harmonious, for my daughter-in-law to have good manners. An old person like me doesn't need a lot of money, just not to feel sad in my old age. The whole room applauded. One of the aunts wiped away a tear. Pretending to be moved, I sat below, looking at Chloe. She wasn't listening to her mother speak. She was looking around, making sure the police hadn't arrived, making sure all the relatives were there, then occasionally looking down to check the lock on her bag. The first course was served, clam chowder. The second, crab cakes. The relatives began to toast, offering congratulations. Someone deliberately walked past my table, sneering. As a daughter-in-law, what's valued is her attitude. Lots of money but no manners is useless. Liam heard that and was about to stand up. I held his hand under the table. Not yet. He turned to me, his hand cold and wet with sweat. I squeezed it gently, not to lean on him, but to remind him to stay calm. When the main course, roasted salmon, was just placed on the main table, Eleanor suddenly put down her chopsticks. She clutched her chest, her face quickly turning pale. The glass of iced tea in front of her was knocked over, the water soaking the red tablecloth. Chloe, I can't breathe. Chloe immediately ran over. Her acting was so quick, I knew this scene had been rehearsed many times in her head. Mom, what's wrong? Are you thinking about the missing money again? The whole room immediately became noisy. Eleanor sobbed, her cries breaking like torn fabric. Oh God, my $16,000. My retirement money. What am I living for? I sat up straight, my eyes never left the black bag in Chloe's hand. The show had begun. Eleanor's cries echoed throughout the room. Just seconds ago, people were raising their glasses to toast and laughing about a happy old age. Now, all spoons and forks stopped. All eyes were on the main table. Eleanor slumped in her chair, one hand clutching her chest, the other patting the table. Oh God, I'm so ashamed. The $16,000 from selling inherited land, meant for my old age, all taken. I'm old, what's the point of living anymore? Chloe immediately knelt beside her mother, hugging her shoulders. Her voice trembled as if for real. Mom, calm down. All our relatives are here today. Liam is here. Alara is here too. Just tell everyone everything. No one will let you be slandered. The way Chloe emphasized my name made the entire room turn to look at me. The gazes were a mix of pity, contempt, and curiosity, but mostly they were judgmental. An aunt stood up and pointed at my table. Who else could it be but her? Since Eleanor sold the land, the one who accompanied her to the bank was Alara. She's an accountant, the one who understands transfers and papers best. An old person's eyesight is poor, their hands tremble. If she wasn't deceived by her, it would be strange. I put down my chopsticks, my back remaining straight. There was anger and pain in my heart, but no more panic. I knew this show was coming, I just didn't expect them to act so flawlessly. Another aunt chimed in. Daughters-in-law these days are scary. They call you mom to your face, but behind your back they drain your retirement funds. Eleanor is too kind, that's why she's being trampled on. An uncle turned to Liam. Liam, you're the eldest son. Your mother is like this, you have to resolve it. Don't be a man controlled by his wife. If you can't protect your mother, do you still have any face left? Liam clenched his fists under the table. I could feel his hand trembling. He was about to stand up, but Eleanor suddenly moaned louder. Liam, if you still defend your wife, I'd rather just die. I'm the one who gave birth to you, the one who endured your father's beatings for years to raise you. Now I've lost my money, and you don't believe me either. That sentence was like a rope tightening around my husband's neck. I saw his shoulders stiffen. The people around immediately gained momentum. See? Mom already said so. Make her apologize. If she won't, call the police. That's a lot of money, not chump change. Chloe stood up, clutching her black bag tightly. She looked at me, her eyes red, but the corner of her mouth was slightly lifted. Alara, I'll ask you one more time. Do you admit to taking Mom's money? If you admit it, apologize in front of the relatives, and promise to pay it back in installments. I think Mom will still forgive you. Liam will also give you a chance. I looked at her. Chloe, you sound very generous, but why would I admit to something that isn't mine? The whole room was in an uproar. Someone slammed the table. Still so stubborn at this point. Wrong but won't bow down. Truly can't be taught. I turned towards Eleanor. She was looking down, crying, but occasionally she would glance up to see people's reactions. I suddenly felt more sad than angry. A woman who was once hurt by life had in the end chosen to use her tears to hurt others. I said loudly enough to be heard, "Ma'am, if you really lost money, I am ready to accompany you to the police station to file a report. But you can't just cry and force me to admit guilt." Eleanor lifted her head. "Do you hear that? She even dares to challenge the police. Today, I won't be patient anymore. Chloe, call the police. I'm old, but I won't let anyone trample on me." Chloe seemed to have been waiting for just that sentence. She immediately took out her phone, her hand holding it trembling just enough for others to think she was emotional. "Hello, good afternoon. I want a report. At the seafood restaurant on this street. My mother lost her pension money, $16,000. The person suspected of taking it is here. There are many witnesses. Please, officers, come and help our family." I heard every word. My heart went cold. The way Chloe spoke was so cunning. She didn't call me her sister-in-law, just the person suspected of taking it, as if I were no longer part of the family. Mr. Thompson, sitting at the guest table, looked at me. The HR manager looked worried and put down her glass. I knew that if I couldn't prove the truth today, my career, even if clean, would be forever tarnished. Liam leaned towards me, his voice very low. "Alara, are you still calm?" I replied. "I'm still calm, Liam. What about you?" He looked at his mother, at Chloe, and then at me. His eyes were red, but this time there was no more doubt. I remember my promise. I said nothing more, just placed my hand on my bag containing the red folder. About 10 minutes later, 3 uniformed police officers entered the room. Their presence made the previously noisy atmosphere fall silent. The lead officer, a man in his 40s, asked in a firm voice, "Who made the report?" Chloe quickly raised her hand. "I did, officer. My mother lost $16,000. Our family suspects my sister-in-law, Alara Vance, took the money. She was the one who accompanied my mother to the bank, and she's the one who understands finances best." Eleanor immediately joined in, crying, "Please help me, officer. I'm old. I had a little money for my old age, and my daughter-in-law took it. She's also very articulate because she's a senior accountant. I can't win an argument with her." The officer turned to me. "Are you Mrs. Alara Vance?" I stood up. "Yes, officer, I am. There is now an official report, and this case involves a large sum of money. Ma'am, please come with us to the station for questioning to avoid further disturbance here." I nodded. I am willing to cooperate, but I also have evidence I need to present. Just as I said that, one of the aunts interjected. "What more evidence? The evidence must be hidden somewhere. The police should search her now before she gets rid of it." The crowd became noisy again. Some overly emotional people moved closer to me. A young officer accompanying the lead moved forward to maintain distance. He placed a hand near his radio, asking everyone to step back and let them do their job. The tension in the restaurant was palpable under the bright yellow lights. At that moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Chloe stood behind her mother, clutching her black bag tightly. Her eyes shone with triumph. Eleanor also stopped crying for a moment, as if waiting for the moment I would break down in front of the whole family. I took a deep breath, preparing to open my bag to take out my files. But before I could speak, Liam stood up straight. He stepped forward, standing directly in front of me, his broad shoulders blocking the crowd's view. His voice rang out, not too loud, but clear enough for the entire room to hear. "Officers, please wait. My wife did not take that money. If anyone needs to be investigated, the first person should be my sister, Chloe Hayes." The entire room was dead silent. Eleanor stared at her son as if in disbelief. "Liam, what did you just say?" Liam didn't turn around immediately. He was still standing in front of me, his back straight, his hands trembling slightly but not retreating. I looked at that back, my nose stinging. After so long of him being silent, finally, at the moment I was being forced to bow down by the entire family, my husband had chosen to stand on the side of the truth. As soon as Liam's words were heard, the entire room seemed to run out of sound. The air conditioner still hummed on the ceiling, and the faint clatter of dishes could be heard, but no one dared to speak. I stood behind my husband's back, watching his shoulders tremble slightly. I knew he was not calm at all. This man had spent half his life loving and yielding to his mother, believing that as long as he was patient, his mother would stop suffering. But today, he was the one who had to bring the truth before her. Eleanor stood up straight, her face flushing. Liam, repeat what you just said. You're telling the police to investigate your own sister? You're defending your wife to the point of bringing down your own mother and sister? Liam turned to face his mother. His eyes were red, but his voice was clear. Mom, I'm not bringing anyone down. I just won't let an innocent person be brought down anymore. Eleanor clutched her chest and staggered as if she were about to fall. An aunt rushed to support her, shouting, My God, Liam has become so ungrateful. His mother has a heart condition, and he still dares to speak like that. In the past, just hearing the word disloyal would have made Liam yield. But today, he did not back down. He looked at his mother, each word as heavy as placing a stone on a table. Mom, you were beaten by Dad. You were controlled. You lived in fear. That's why I've loved you my whole life. But Mom, a person who has suffered does not have the right to use their suffering to torture others. Alara is not a shadow of you in the past. My wife has done nothing wrong that would make her have to bow her head and bear this shame. No one expected Liam to dare say that. Eleanor was stunned. Her tears were still flowing, but this time, not as smoothly as in her earlier performance. Chloe stepped forward, clutching her black bag even tighter. Liam, you've been brainwashed by her. I'm your sister, she is your mother. And you believe an outsider? Liam turned a sharp gaze on Chloe. Alara is my wife, not an outsider. And you are my sister. But that doesn't give you the right to take Mom's money and then accuse your own sister-in-law. Chloe's face turned pale. You're talking nonsense. What money? When did I take it? Liam pointed straight at the bag in his sister's hand. What did you buy that bag with? What did you use for the down payment on the condo in the suburbs? The $4,200 debt to the predatory lender? Where did you get the money? And the $1,800 you have in that bag right now? You were planning to frame my wife, weren't you? The whole room erupted in whispers. The mention of the loan shark's name made several relatives exchange worried glances. Chloe took a step back, her lips trembling. Liam, who did you hear that from? Alara must have made it up. I stepped out from behind Liam's back. I opened my bag, took out my phone and the red folder. I didn't speak loudly, but my voice was clear enough. Chloe, I didn't make it up. And the camera in my house can't make things up either. I played the video recording from 3:12 a.m., aiming the phone's screen at the police officers. Then Liam took the microphone from the table and held it near the phone's speaker so everyone could see and hear. In the black and white video, Chloe snuck into the apartment, walked straight to the drawer, and took Eleanor's ID and ATM card. A collective gasp was heard. The other aunt covered her mouth. Is that really Chloe? Chloe ran to snatch my phone. You recorded me secretly. You're breaking the law. Liam blocked her. You were the one who snuck into our house in the middle of the night to take Mom's ATM card. Now you're saying someone else recorded you secretly? Chloe, don't disappoint me even more. I turned to the police officer. Officers, this is a copy. The original file is saved on a USB and in my personal email. I am willing to provide it. It was then that David, my lawyer, stood up from his table. He approached politely and handed his business card to the officer. I am David Chen, legal counsel for Mrs. Alara Vance. In addition to this video recording, we also have an audio recording that clearly shows a plan to place cash near Mrs. Vance's position during today's event. We request that the officers examine the contents of the bag belonging to Miss Decken. Chloe Hayes to ensure evidence is not destroyed. Chloe screamed, No, that's my bag. You can't touch it. The lead officer looked at her, his voice firm. Ma'am, please calm down. There is a report of lost assets and evidence pointing directly to you. Please cooperate by opening your bag for inspection. In front of everyone, Chloe clutched her bag and backed away, her eyes searching for her mother. Mom, say something. Eleanor opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her expression was a strange mix of fear and indignation. Perhaps she never thought her ever-obedient son would one day stand on the opposite side of her lies. Liam took out his phone and played the audio recording from the previous night. Chloe's voice echoed through the microphone, every word as sharp as a knife. I'll keep $1,800 in my bag. When Mom starts crying, all the relatives will gather around. I'll find a way to slip the bundle of money near Alara's chair. The police will come, see the evidence, and she won't be able to deny it. Right after that, Eleanor's voice was heard. That Alara has been annoying me for a long time. She's a daughter-in-law in this house. Is it too much for her to bear a little shame? This time, not only did the room fall silent, But even the aunt, who had been the loudest in insulting me, bowed her head deeply. Mr. Thompson, sitting at the guest table, looked straight at me. His gaze was no longer doubtful, but the heavy look of someone witnessing a family expose its own shame. The police signaled a female restaurant employee to act as a witness, then asked Chloe to place her bag on the table. Chloe cried, her hands still gripping the bag. I don't want to open it. It's my personal property. The officer looked at her, his voice stern. Ma'am, you have the right to refuse a search. However, based on this audio recording indicating intent to frame someone with cash currently in your possession, we will secure this room and request a search warrant. If the cash is found, you will face felony charges for extortion, filing a false police report, and tampering with evidence. Hearing the words felony charges, Chloe panicked. She grabbed her black bag, intending to storm out of the room, but her hands were trembling so much that it slipped. The bag hit the floor, spilling its contents across the tiles. Lipstick, a wallet, a phone, a small bottle of perfume, and a black plastic-wrapped bundle rolled out for everyone to see. The officer stepped forward, picked up the bundle, and unwrapped the plastic. A stack of $100 bills appeared, neatly arranged and bound by a rubber band. The label clearly showed the amount, $1,800. A collective intake of breath was heard throughout the room. Someone even dropped a spoon on the ceramic floor. Eleanor slumped in her chair, her face as gray as ash. Chloe cried, her legs giving way until she sat on the floor. But this time, no one ran to help her. I stood silently, looking at the stack of money on the table. There was no sense of victory, no satisfaction. I just felt a huge weight had been lifted from my chest, leaving a hollow, aching void. Liam turned to me. He reached out and held my hand in front of everyone. His hand was still cold, but this time it was very firm. Alara, I'm sorry for letting you go through all this just to hear one sentence of defense that I should have given you a long time ago. I looked at him, my eyes hot but not crying. It's not over, Liam. The truth must be fully revealed. The police secured the stack of money and the bag as evidence, then asked everyone involved to come to the station for questioning. Eleanor stood up, trembling. There was no longer the aura of a wronged mother. Chloe bowed her head deeply, her neatly styled hair hanging down, covering half of her mascara-streaked face. As I walked out of the room, the relatives automatically moved aside. No one pointed fingers anymore. No one called me a disloyal daughter-in-law. But I knew an apology wouldn't come that easily. Some people only bow their heads when hit by the truth, not because they are genuinely aware of their mistake. But at least today, the black bag Chloe had once used to flaunt her luxury had pointed out its true owner. And the husband, who had once been silent because of the word devotion, finally understood that protecting his mother did not mean letting her bring down his wife. From the restaurant to the police station, the drive was only about 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. The police car in front was followed by our car, David's car, and a few others who were asked to be witnesses. Eleanor sat in the same car as Chloe. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her looking down, her hands wringing the hem of her red lace dress. Just an hour ago, she was the star of her own birthday party. Now, the red of her dress no longer looked luxurious but like a garish color covering up her shame. At the police station, we were all asked into an interrogation room. The officer asked everyone to remain calm and tell their side of the story. The black bag, the stack of $1,800, and Chloe's phone were placed on the table as evidence and recorded in the report. Chloe sat across from me, her makeup ruined, mascara forming black streaks under her eyes. But even when questioned by the officer, she still tried to fight. That money is my personal money. Is it wrong for me to keep it in my bag? Alara and Liam conspired to frame me. David calmly placed a copy of the audio recording on the table. In this recording, Miss Hayes herself states that the money was intended to frame Mrs. Vance. Furthermore, there is information about a $10,000 condo down payment and a $4,200 debt payment to a predatory lender. We request that the police examine Mrs. Eleanor Hayes' bank statements to trace the flow of these funds. Hearing the words bank statements, Eleanor was shocked. I don't remember. How would an old person understand transfers like that? Liam, sitting next to me, looked at his mother. His gaze was so pained I couldn't bear to look at him for long. Mom, you don't understand? But Chloe took your ATM card and ID at 3 a.m. It was recorded on camera. Are you still going to say you know nothing? Eleanor's lips trembled. Liam. I was just afraid of being embarrassed. I didn't want the problem to get this big. Liam gave a bitter smile. You were afraid of being embarrassed, but you let my wife be shamed in front of the entire family. Accused of theft in front of her boss, in front of the police. Your pride is valuable. Is that it? That question made Eleanor bow her head even deeper. For the first time, I saw her unable to immediately burst into tears. Maybe because the tears she usually used were no longer effective in a room full of evidence. The police contacted the bank for initial verification. Since Eleanor herself had reported the loss and was now at the police station, the checking process could be done quickly with the bank's cooperation. Nearly an hour later, a copy of the major transactions was printed out. Each line of numbers appeared clearly, cold, and unforgiving. On the 8th of last month, $10,000 was transferred from Eleanor's account to a real estate company. The memo: Condo DP for Chloe Hayes. I glanced at Chloe. Her face was ashen. The officer continued. On the 12th, a cash withdrawal of $4,200 at an ATM. The bank's CCTV would need to be checked, but the withdrawal slip had the account owner's signature. On the 15th, another cash withdrawal of $1,800. Chloe quickly shouted, "The $4,200 was withdrawn by Mom herself. It has nothing to do with me." Liam placed his phone on the table and replayed the audio recording, right at the part where Chloe mentioned the loan shark's name. Her voice was clear in the room. $4,200 to pay off a loan shark. He's got his money. He'll keep quiet. No one spoke, only the sound of the ceiling fan. The recording officer asked, "Who is this loan shark?" Chloe bit her lip and didn't answer. David added another piece of paper. "I have a screenshot of a message from an unknown number sent to Mrs. Vance, as well as some initial information about a predatory online lending company. We request that the police investigate further." Chloe cried. "I just borrowed it temporarily. My sales were slow. I was being hounded by debt collectors. I was scared. I didn't mean any harm. It was Mom. Mom said she hated Alara. She said if Alara confessed, Liam would divorce her, and the apartment could." She stopped herself. Eleanor screamed, "Chloe, be quiet!" The room fell silent again. Chloe looked at her mother with a panicked expression. Just a moment ago, they were a mother and daughter embracing at a birthday party. Now, because of one wrong sentence, they feared each other. I watched the scene, my heart feeling no victory. Greed is like quicksand. One person pulls another down. By the time the mud reaches their necks, they start blaming each other. It was then that I took the $4,200 promissory note from my folder and placed it before the police. I'd like to provide additional documentation. 3 years ago, Mrs. Hayes borrowed $4,200 from me to redeem a land title because Chloe was in debt. This note is notarized, has a signature. To this day, it has not been repaid. I'm not showing this to collect on it now, but to clarify that if there is any debt between us, it is she who owes me, not me who took her $16,000. The officer took the note, examined it carefully, and nodded. "We will record this document." Eleanor looked up at me, her eyes a mixture of shame, hatred, and pleading. Her lips moved. "Alara, that's an old issue. How could you bring it up now?" I looked at her, my voice low but clear. "You had the heart to drag my honor into the middle of a restaurant. You had the heart to bring my parents to the front of their diner. You had the heart to drag my job into this lie. At that time, did you ever think whether you had the heart or not?" Eleanor couldn't answer. Mr. Thompson was also asked to give a statement about the anonymous email. He explained it briefly and factually. Before leaving the room, he turned to me. "Alara, the company will restore your work authority as soon as this preliminary investigation report shows you are not involved. Regarding the anonymous email, if you need cooperation in providing technical data, the company will assist." I bowed my head in thanks. That one sentence at a time like this was not just about justice, but also a support for my years of living honestly in my profession. Just when everything seemed clear, a man entered after being called for verification. It was Chloe's boyfriend. He wore a gray shirt, his face serious, his forehead sweating. As soon as she saw him, Chloe cried loudly, "Honey, please tell them you bought me the bag." Her boyfriend looked at the black bag on the table, then at Chloe. His voice was cold. "Chloe, I never bought you this bag. I also didn't know you made a down payment on a condo. Last week, you were still asking to borrow a few $100s because your inventory wasn't selling. It turns out you had money to buy a house." Chloe was dumbfounded. Don't leave me." At that moment, the boyfriend took a step back. "I may be poorer than other people, But I will not marry a woman who uses her own mother and sister-in-law as a shield for her greed. That sentence was the final slap to Chloe's pride. She slumped in her chair, crying without a sound. Eleanor reached out to hug her daughter, but Liam had already stood up. "Mom, I'm begging you, stop the act." Eleanor was stunned, her eyes wide. Liam looked at her, his voice low. "I am still your son. I still have a responsibility to care for you when you are sick and old. But from today on, I will not take any more orders from you if it forces me to hurt my wife. You were wrong. You must admit it. Chloe was wrong. Chloe must bear the consequences. No one is allowed to use the word family to force others to bear their sins." Eleanor cried her heart out. Not the soft sobs to gain sympathy, but the hoarse cries of someone who had finally realized she had lost too much. Late that night, we left the police station after completing the initial investigation report. Chloe had to stay for further questioning. Eleanor was taken home by a relative, stumbling in her now wrinkled red dress. Out in the parking lot, the night air was cold. I stood beside Liam, looking at the closed gates of the police station behind us. He said quietly, "Alara, I don't know how I can make up for all of this." I looked at him, my heart weary. "There are things that can't be made up for, Liam. You can only make sure this never happens again." Liam nodded. He didn't immediately take my hand. Perhaps he understood that after all this, I needed space for myself. On the way home, the city was no longer as crowded. The streetlights stretched out in long lines on the wet asphalt. I leaned my head against the seat and closed my eyes. In my head, the numbers still swirled. 10,000, 4,000, 200, 1,000, 800, another 4,000, 200. Those lifeless numbers had exposed greed, selfishness, and a family bond that had been destroyed by money. They say money can't buy dignity, but sometimes with a large enough sum, a person's true dignity is revealed. 3 days after the police investigation, Precision Ceramics Incorporated restored all my authorities. Mr. Thompson personally sent out an internal announcement stating that the case concerning me had been verified and there was no evidence of my involvement in any family asset misappropriation. The email was short and to the point, but for me, it was like a clean cloth wiping away the mud others had tried to throw on my honor. That morning, when I entered the accounting department, everyone stood up and greeted me as usual. Nina, the young staff member who had defended me, placed a warm cup of tea on my desk. "Mrs. Vance, I made you tea with a little sugar, just how you like it." I looked at the teacup, my throat tightening. "Thank you, Nina." The HR manager approached and held my hand. "Alara, about the other day." "I'm sorry. There was a time when I was also confused." I smiled faintly. It's normal to be confused. But knowing when to stop before judging someone, that's enough. The room was quiet for a moment, then the sound of printers and keyboards resumed. Work continued as usual. Only now, I was no longer the woman cornered in a dark shadow. That evening, Liam picked me up from work. On the way, he told me that Chloe had to make restitution. The $10,000 condo down payment was temporarily held by the developer, but after negotiations and agreeing to forfeit some fees, most of the money was recovered. The $4,200 paid to the predatory lender was also under further police investigation. The $1,800 in cash had been confiscated as evidence. Chloe was not immediately detained, but had to report regularly. Her online cosmetics business collapsed as soon as the case came to light. Her boyfriend broke off their engagement. He sent a short message to Liam. "Your sister needs to learn how to be a human being before she can be someone's wife." Hearing that, I didn't feel happy. Those who do wrong must bear the consequences. That is fair. But seeing a family torn apart by money and envy, I just felt tired. As for Eleanor, since that party, she hadn't called me. She called Liam many times, but Liam would only answer if I was beside him, not to control, but so everything was clear. He also changed the apartment locks, took back the spare key he had once given to Chloe, and then told his mother in a calm voice, "Mom, from now on, we will send you monthly financial support. When you're sick, I will still take care of you. But you are no longer to interfere in our marriage, you are not to insult Alara, and you are not to drag relatives into our private matters. If you do, I will only fulfill my responsibility on paper, not with the obedience of the past," Eleanor cried. This time, Liam listened silently, but he no longer panicked to comfort her. One Saturday night, Eleanor suddenly came to the apartment. She wore a simple brown outfit, her hair tied back low. Her face looked much thinner. In her hand was a thick envelope. Liam opened the door, looked at his mother, and then at me. I nodded. Eleanor came in and sat on the sofa. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock was clear. After a long moment, she placed the envelope on the table. This is the $4,200 I owed you 3 years ago. I gathered some from the money that was recovered. The rest I borrowed from your aunt. I'm returning it to you. I looked at the envelope, then at her. I accept it. Not because I desperately need this money, but so you understand. A debt is a debt, a favor is a favor. You cannot use your status as a mother-in-law to erase all obligations. Eleanor's lips trembled, tears fell, but she no longer wailed. Alara, I'm sorry. That apology came late. Later than the days I was tormented. Later than the cold stares at the office. Later than the sound of the bullhorn in front of my mother's store. Later than the moment the police almost took me away. I asked, "What are you sorry for, ma'am?" Eleanor looked up, confused. I said slowly, "If you are only sorry because you got caught, I don't need it. But if you are sorry because you truly realize you slandered me, shamed my parents, and dragged my job into this lie, then I will listen." Eleanor cried. But this time her sobs were quiet and broken. I was wrong. I was envious of you. I saw you had a good job, loving parents, a husband by your side. I started to think you were taking my son from me. I suffered my whole life because of your father. I wanted you to know what it feels like to be afraid of a mother-in-law, like I was once afraid of my husband. I was wrong. Liam turned his face away. I knew he was hurting. I was hurting too. But this time, the pain no longer made me bow my head. You suffered. I understand that. But suffering is not a license to make others suffer. I will not force Liam to leave you. I will not forbid you from seeing your son. But from now on, there must be a boundary between you and me. I can respect you, help when needed, but I will not let you trample on me again. Eleanor nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I understand. I didn't know if she truly understood. People can't change overnight. But at least that day, for the first time, she admitted her mistake without blaming her past. A week later, Eleanor sent an apology to the family group chat. It wasn't long or flowery, but it was clear enough. She admitted to being influenced by Chloe, accusing me without proof, and damaging my family's reputation and my career. The aunts also had to come to my mother's store to apologize in front of the neighbors who were witnesses that day. My mother didn't scold them. She just said, "Well, if you know you're wrong, you fix it. But next time, don't come screaming at someone's house." It's easy to shout when you are angry, but taking back cruel words is hard. My father stood beside her, pouring tea for the guests, as friendly as ever. But from that day on, no one in Liam's family dared to look down on my simple family. As for the two of us, we didn't immediately go back to being affectionate. There were dinners that still felt silent. There were nights I woke up remembering the divorce petition in his jacket pocket. There were times when Liam wanted to hold my hand, then pulled it back, afraid I wasn't ready, but he changed. He started accompanying me to my parents' house more often. He called on his own to ask how my mother was doing after the day she was shamed. He learned to say no to Eleanor, even though every time he did, he would still stand on the balcony for a long time, pondering. One night, he placed a small notebook in front of me. He had recorded every expense sent to his mother, every matter related to his family. From now on, everything is transparent for you. I don't want to leave you guessing anymore. I looked at the notebook, then at the man before me. He wasn't perfect. He had been weak, had hurt me, but at least he had dared to look straight at his mistakes. I said, "I don't need you to be your mother's enemy. I just need you to be Shishika." Liam took my hand. This time, I let him. Outside the balcony, Chicago was entering the rainy season. The wind blew through the rose pots my mother had brought over, their petals trembling under the yellow light. I suddenly thought that in life, it's only after you've walked half the road that you understand. Family is not a place where whoever has the loudest voice wins. Nor is it a place where the young must forever bow to the old. A family only truly becomes a family when there is love, there are boundaries, and there is respect. A daughter-in-law can be patient to maintain harmony. A son can be devoted to repay his parents. But patience does not mean accepting slander, and devotion does not mean covering up mistakes. A person who has suffered should know better how to love others, not pass down their suffering to their daughter-in-law and the next generation.